Okay.
Because I basically had to restart the process.
Okay.
Maybe this song could be our theme song. We can all work together. We can all work together. We can all work together to make a better world.
Awesome.
It has some more verses. We live in a place, in a neighborhood. A neighborhood is a part of a city. A city's a part of a state, and a state of a country. But we're going to get rid of all the boundaries. I just made that up. And we're creating a vegan world together, a world where everyone can thrive. We're gonna do it by 2026.
Yay!
Create that world.
And then could I post a comment
Just made that up.
just to give people the link? Or I guess I could do that.
I can put it
Okay.
in.
Yeah. Yeah, go for it. Sorry, we're just doing some last minute
That's
technical
okay.
stuff.
I guess we can. I'll keep talking if.
Patricia's like, no problem. I can keep.
Okay. Love grows 1 by 1, 2 by 2, and 4 by 4. Love grows round like a circle and comes back knocking at your front door. That's a kid song.
Nolan, where's the eject button to like? Oh, we're not on mute. Oh my goodness. I was getting ready to send an email. I'm so sorry, Patricia. We seem to have some technical difficulties here.
I thought you wanted to eject me from the Zoom. I thought there was a
Well, full disclosure, that's what I was joking about, but I was only joking.
Oh, good. I'm glad you feel.
If anyone needs to be ejected from this meeting, it's me. But being the compassionate space that we are.
Should we be quiet while you're working?
What's that?
So can we keep talking?
No, keep talking. It's mandatory to keep talking.
Okay, well, I want to say that I just learned about this kind of mind mapping system that you can put right on Google Doc.
Oh.
And I want to celebrate because I used to get so confused by that, but I am figuring it out, and I'm making like a flow chart to show how the compassionate living circles, which are these groups that are going to be embedded in I mean, not embedded, but it was Thomas Jackson's idea that after showing a prayer for compassion, people could start these compassionate living circles, but they haven't been developed for 2 years. And so I took on the project, but I'm seeing the compassionate living circles as these like cells that will healthy community. Somebody's really trying to call me. Let's see. I don't know what's going on here. Oh, yeah. So, so I'm so excited because my brain, I think it's because we're having a brain, like a mind meld of all you technical people as going into my brain. And I'm just going, I can do this. I'm not going to I can do, and of course they're making things easier. So I'm very excited because these compassionate living circles, they can be, they're just going, I want to teach the facilitator training. I want to create it, but of course, lots of input from everyone so that we can make the facilitator develop leaders, basically, who can really facilitate the creation of healthy small groups. And then they'll all connect like in a faith community, and then maybe and then all those ones will connect, and they'll have conferences, and neighborhoods will have them, and then it'll just be like cells taking over like an amoeba.
Totally. Love it. Well, I'll tell you what, we've got all of our technicals dialed in. Speaking of technical, Patricia. And so I think we're ready to start recording. We already are broadcasting on my Facebook page and YouTube channel. Shall we share the love with the world and record with intent to publish? All right. I see.
Sure. Yes.
Awesome. Thank you, Ehud. Thank you, Shiloh. Thanks, everybody. Okay. And by the way, we can start off with just some brief intros for those who feel like giving an intro to themselves or a brief update or whatever. And then we can get into the heart of the agenda because we've got some exciting new developments that I've been very excited to share with you all. So with that, recording in 3, 2, 1. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Solution Club at the beginning of the new world. Today, we're excited because we are live streaming this broadcast, both on my Facebook page and on my YouTube channel. Are we also streaming it on the Radish one or just mine? Probably just mine, right? Anyway. I think it was the Radish Facebook. Anyway, so we're streaming it out on as many channels as we can, which is super exciting. And we're going to start off by giving folks the opportunity to share whatever is the latest in your world, or if you want to give an introduction to yourself, that's totally fine. I can just see Patricia chomping at the bit there. So Patricia, you want to start off with a brief intro and update?
Yeah, what is brief, would you say? I want to time myself because
I don't know. Maybe cap it at an hour. I'm just kidding. I mean, a minute or two, something like that.
Okay, well, I'm excited because last night we had a Interfaith Vegan Coalition meeting, and we had an after party that I facilitated, and I used I timed people so that we could all have equal time, and people just shared from their hearts about their spiritual history, what they're passionate about, and I got to know people a lot better, and I felt really great because everybody felt good about being concise, and then we could hear from everyone equally. And I also am very excited because I'm going to be giving a proposal to Judy Carmen and Lisa Levinson about the compassionate living circles, which are I still don't have like a tagline for them, but I'm going to call them small healthy communities that can either be in faith communities or neighborhoods or anywhere. And so I'm developing the training program for that and the conceptual things and getting feedback from the people whose idea it was. So I'm excited because Thursday we're having that meeting, and I'm hoping that will gather the energy so we can take off like a rocket ship or shoot up like bamboo that's got roots that have been going down for 70 years.
All I can say, Patricia, is I think you and I were separated at birth somehow. And I'm just so happy to be reunited over half a century later. So welcome, sister. All righty. And thank you for that. All righty. Who else would like to share either an introduction or an update?
I'll give an update. Well, my name is Evan, and I currently live in Seattle, and I'm working on making a move up to Whidbey Island. And so the past week has been very busy, kind of for me. I felt my my locus of control kind of just like centered down around my apartment here as I'm trying to organize and strategize how I can abandon the ship here and swim over to Whidbey Island. Aside from that, I'm an artist and a musician, and so that has been really kind of filling my head recently, and I feel like I've been producing a lot of really good ideas just around music that is like directly about what I'm worried about in the world. Because I guess that's the only thing that I can kind of justify making music about is the world I want to see, you know. And so I've been kind of allowing myself to just pour out a little bit more, and that's been really nice to experience. And I'm eager to see where that goes into the future.
Beautiful, beautiful, awesome. Wow, and it'll be so cool to have you up on Whidbey Island. All righty. Who's next? Any other updates and or introductions?
I'm Dharmendra. Met Jamin about, maybe almost 4 months ago, right after the Vegan World 2026 conference in Mesa, where I live, actually. I live in Mesa also, just around the corner from Silas Rao, who I bumped into probably 2 years ago at a Zen Nights that happens in Mesa. I do this vegan synergy meditation in Vegan World 2026. My main objective is accelerated collective evolution, which I've been working on since 1993 in small groups of people in living rooms across the world, literally in Italy and India, France, Switzerland, I mean, across the world, literally, Hawaii, California, Virginia. And ever since I met Jamin, and he mentioned to me about radical collective intelligence, and several other projects, but my favorite is Radical Collective Intelligence. I'll just admit it. I felt an immediate kinship through accelerated collective evolution. And that's enough. That's introduction for me. Dharmendra Gordon.
Awesome. Thank you, Dharmendra, brother. Beautiful. Any other updates or intros? All righty. Well, I am super excited for a lot of reasons. And one of which is this Friday, we're going to have the first of what will be, well, actually, before I even get into that, let me just share for those who are watching that I'm, number one, thank you for watching. Love that you're tuning in to the Solution Club at the beginning of the new world, which originally was called the Social Club at the end of the world. And I just want to let everyone know that you're welcome to actually join us on this video conference. And actually, I mean, like literally be here in the video conference room with us, just like everyone else here. And that's greatly encouraged because what we're doing here, we're doing many things here, but one of the things that we're doing here is we're bringing humanity together so that we can actually talk with each other, right? Direct, face-to-face, and this is the beginning of a global community of really a new kind of social network. We use the acronym SNAC for Social Network of Actual Conversations. In fact, at some point we'll be launching the Snack Bar. It'll be snack.bar, literally snac.bar, the Social Network of Actual Conversations. And our big vision is a network where there are literally millions of conversations happening on all the topics that are important. All those who are comfortable sharing their voices and their conversations with the world can, as we are doing right now, broadcast their conversations in real time, like we're doing right now, and also have their conversations transcribed into text in real time, which facilitates then the following two scenarios. Number one, simultaneous translation into all other languages automatically. That's just already a piece of cake, software-wise, AI-wise. And then second is index these transcripts in real time so that people can search for and find those conversations they would like to either watch or participate in, right? And so in so doing, what we're creating with this network of these actual conversations, maybe we should really call it a network of supercharged conversations, because when you do this live broadcasting, transcription, translation, indexing, search, databasizing, et cetera, and all these other technical buzzwords that Patricia loves to rattle off her tongue. I'm just joking with Patricia because she's my long lost sister. Anyway, and that's a warning. Any other long lost siblings of mine out there, we'll have fun together. So, but anyway, the big idea is that this through this network of conversations, the conversations and the supercharging through broadcasting, transcription, translation, indexing, search, et cetera, all that creates massive connective tissue between the conversations and between the people participating in the conversations. And so you can imagine each of us, imagine my cranium being like literally like a neuron, a single neuron in this vast network of neurons. And we're all just like blip, 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 blip. At any one given time, we're like, right now, we're like a virtual cluster of neurons. Patricia, Nolan, Jamin, Dharmendra, Evan, Ray, Shiloh, Ehud, we're all like talking to each other, right? And at the same time, we're broadcasting to all the other neurons who might be interested in listening. Either sitting there and listening with their mouth hanging open like me, or in some, or like Ray, or systematically and programmatically, actually Ray's kind of frozen there. Okay, good. Or systematically and programmatically listening in by, for example, you can subscribe to certain keywords, hashtags, and say, hey, if anyone starts talking about, solar radiation management using mirrors floating in the oceans, let me know. I don't care what time it is. Wake me up. I want to be in those conversations. You could take it to that extreme, or just say, hey, just let me know. And I might subscribe to a whole bunch of different things. So on my dashboard, I might just have this ongoing feed. New conversation starting up about solar radiation management, right? And so I might be like, oh my goodness, hey, they need me over here in this other conversation. I'll be back. See ya, boop. And then, Jamin disappears from the screen. And then he comes back later and says, I'm back, and I just had this great conversation. This is all part of the connective tissue, the neuronological connective tissue in this new global collective intelligence, global consciousness we're creating. Wow, it's kind of mind-blowing. So anyway, anyone and everyone, please feel free to join us live, like join us. Anyway, so I just wanted to make that invitation. There's so much I'm excited to share right now. So among other news, we're in the process of scheduling a number of really cool conversations for this Friday's Collective Intelligence Block Party. And for full information on that, please go to radish.org. There's a banner that says Collective Intelligence Block Party on the homepage. Please click on that and you can find out all about it. Now, we have scheduled for Friday from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific time, which is 10 a.m. to 12 noon Eastern time. We have a 2-hour meeting scheduled during the block party, during which Professor Guy McPherson and Dr. Yetao of Harvard and I will be leading a conversation about solar radiation management at planetary scale to cool our planet. Stop this exponential planetary overheating trajectory that's melting all the ice, setting Australia on fire, setting Greenland on fire, for crying out loud. It's really getting hot out there. And there's just way too much energy in the atmosphere and the oceans, and it's catastrophic, and it's getting worse and worse and worse. I'm going to introduce the topic of solar radiation management in the following terms, just very briefly. I know Dharmendra, Ray, Patricia, and I, being the older bunch here in the room, we all remember Monty Python. Well, remember, like in Monty Python, there'd be like, I don't know, some like orchestra or something. Oh, people playing music. Oh, and then all of a sudden, boom, this big gigantic like Godzilla foot just comes down and squishes the whole party. Well, we need a Godzilla-like foot to do the following. So, pardon me, Nolan, if this is the exponential trajectory of temperature rise, right? We need to, bam, hit it with something really hard, because right now the exponential is getting fueled by no fewer than 67 self-reinforcing feedback loops, all pushing temperature in one direction, up. Okay, we need a big old Monty Python foot to bat that thing back down, not just stop it, but actually deflect it and cool the planet. We can accomplish both of those things with solar radiation management. That's right, solar radiation management, or SRM, is the missing Monty Python Godzilla foot that will finally put exponential planetary overheating in its place, which is in reverse. We need to cool the planet down to pre-industrial levels that support the maximum diversity and quantity of life for the long term. So we're going to be having that conversation. And is it up on the homepage of Radish yet, that 12-minute video? If it's not,
It's on the CI Block Party page.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Oh, good, good, good. Okay. So if you go to radish.org and click on the Block Party banner on the homepage of radish.org, and then scroll down right there, the second video, you'll see one where you see Guy McPherson, Ye Tao, and Jamin. Anyway, it's right there. It's a 12-minute video. It's a must watch. You don't have to watch it right now, but please watch. Please just flag it to watch it. It's a great 12-minute video, and we give the introduction. And we basically, I mean, it's literally as simple as this. There is no other way to cool the planet in time other than SRM, right? We are long past the point where reducing emissions can cool the planet, right? We need much heavier medicine than drawdown at this point to cool the planet in time. It's just as simple as that. The science is very clear. So we're going to be having that discussion over a 2-hour period to which everyone is invited, right? This is collective intelligence. We're going to bring collective intelligence to this. So that's very exciting. And I've got other exciting news. Speaking of the 70s, it's like that Ginsu Knives ad. You remember that, Dharmendra, Patricia? Ginsu Knives. Okay, Dharmendra, come on. Oh, anyway, I was a kid watching TV at the time. So anyway, we had these Ginsu Knives ads. But anyway, enough about Ginsu Knives. I sent out an invitation, check this out, to our beloved resident celebrity, Dr. Silas Rao, and to another well-known person, Mr. Alan Savory of Holistic Land Management fame, right? And I said, hey, let's have a conversation, right? Both of your communities that you lead, the vegan community and the Holistic Land Management community, both are passionately committed to saving life on Earth and cooling the planet. Why don't we start with that common ground and just have an open, non-judgmental, friendly, compassionate, collective intelligence conversation? So I sent that email out to both of them. Today, this morning, both of them responded. And it's 2 thumbs up. They're in. We're going to have the conversation. And yeah, so exciting. So we're now finally getting on the table in a way the most important conversations that humanity needs to have right now, including solar radiation management, cooling the planet, veganism, holistic land management. What do we eat? How do we raise our food, right? How do we grow our food? How do we get Ray to stop laughing in serious public meetings? All right. These, thank you. No laughing, no, just kidding. Okay, anyway, so, yesterday I spoke with Michael Gallo of Mythic Systems, and he's gonna give a talk at the block party on Friday about writing a new story for humanity, right? With all the mythical archetypes and all the kind of Dharmendra cool stuff that we get to jam with. In fact, Dharmendra, I'd love it if you would be available. This will be Friday afternoon that we'll be having that one, starting at like, I think it's currently scheduled to start at 2 o'clock Pacific, which would be 3 o'clock Arizona. But anyway, that's when we'll start it, and it'll go for like an hour and a half, 2 hours. Anyway, we'll talk about that. But love to have you participating, Dharmendra. Maybe you could even lead something if you wanted to Friday afternoon. This is all just coming together so quickly. That's the exciting thing. But Silas, in his response, which I need to reply to right now, even suggested that we have our Silas Rao, Alan Savory, Jamin Shively conversation on Thursday, record it, broadcast it, and then that would set the stage for an open collective intelligence conversation on the topics of veganism and holistic land management and diet and all that for Friday, right? How cool is that? So the headline is collective intelligence is happening and we are swarming around the most crucial, most important topics pertaining to saving life on Earth. And let's face it, saving life on Earth is now the only game in town. Because if we don't manage it, all other games automatically disappear and stop forever. So let's play the infinite game of continuing life on Earth. So let's save life on Earth, stop this crazy planetary overheating that's killing us all little by little. And soon, lot by lot, it already is lot by lot in Australia. Just talk with the poor Australian wildlife suffering from the forest fires, the wildfires. It's game over for them. So enough is enough. Let's put an end to this madness. We have the tools to do it. We have the intelligence to do it, but we need to bring this intelligence together in a collective, integrated way, which is what we're doing right here, right now on the Solution Club. So anyway, very excited to give those updates. I'm going to complete this email to Dr. Silas Rao and Alan Savory so we can get it all dialed in, but that'll just take me a minute. I'm right here. Love to hear from everyone. Right now, no one's in the queue at the moment. When a lot of people want to talk at once, we have a queue. Ray posted a question. He says, are there pictures that illustrate SRM with mirrors so we can picture it and make the visual sale? The answer is yes. And in that 12-minute video, Dr. Yatow of Harvard shows an image of these vast arrays of floating mirrors in the oceans. So that's in that video. There's another video that we'll have to post a link to where he also shows an elevation view, a cross-section view of one of those mirrors floating, but they're basically round mirrors made of glass. So non-polluting, durable, and we literally need on the order of millions of square miles of reflective surface to forcibly cool the planet. That is the Monty Python Godzilla foot that will finally put planetary overheating in its place.
That's over the ocean?
Yep, over the oceans. Vast arrays of floating mirrors floating in the oceans at different strategic locations around the world, which we still need to determine the best distribution of exactly where to put these arrays of mirrors. So we're working on that. And in fact, we need a whole modeling capability to be able to model different scenarios and identify the very best one and then optimize it. But anyway, that's a detailed rat hole discussion about.
Have you seen those black plastic balls that they throw into reservoirs to block out the sun from algae growth?
No, I have not. What roughly
Plastic
that
balls about this big, and they'll cover the like thousands of them, and they're black for some reason. And it seems counterintuitive because of the albedo, but they say that it has to be black, and they're reusable. And there's videos on YouTube. It's quite fascinating. It's very bizarre to see because they'll jump in a boat and make their way through this giant, miles wide ball pit. But that makes me think that if you're over the ocean, why not over those dead zones where all these, where the algae has wiped out a lot of the, it might be, maybe dead zone is too little too late, but those algae patches, that may be a solution to kill algae patches and do a large amount of solar radiation.
Love it, love it, love it. In fact, there's lots of opportunities for holistic addressing of multiple concerns. What you just mentioned is a great example of that. But another possibility is the generation of electricity using, concentrating that sunlight, as happens with what's it called, where they concentrate the heat and drive a turbine. Solar
Solar thermal.
Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, solar thermal power generation, like they have in the deserts. But anyway, the bottom line is we can metaphorically kill multiple birds with one stone by addressing multiple things at once. So anyway, but the basic idea is basically these arrays of floating mirrors. A little later, I'll get an image that I can screen share, and there's space between the round mirrors so that it doesn't other than maybe a special application like what you're talking about, Ray. In general, it would leave exposed probably at least 2/3 of the surface area wherever the rays are, so it doesn't just totally block out all light, etc. for those ocean ecosystems. And anyway, but the thing that needs to happen urgently is we need to get to whatever the magic number of millions of square miles of reflective surface. We're talking about 5 or 6 Alaskas worth of surface area of mirror that needs to reflect sunlight back into space to cool the planet that way. And then once we've cooled the planet, then we can set about doing all the decarbonization that needs to happen. But if we do decarbonization before cooling the planet, there's a very big risk, which is related to the global dimming effect, where the dirtiest carbon emissions also include a whole bunch of particulates, solid particulates of very fine, very small scale. And hey, Uncle Frank, welcome. Good to see you, Uncle Frank. We are recording and broadcasting live. And I was just talking about the global dimming effect, which you can tell us about, Uncle Frank, if you'd like, where these particulates that are part of the dirtiest emissions of CO2, those particulates are actually providing shading to the planet right now, such that if we were to eliminate even 20% of those particulates, we would very quickly, in a matter of days to weeks, experience an approximately 1 degree centigrade spike in temperature above the hot temperatures we're already experiencing, because we would lose that global masking effect, the global dimming effect. So we have to be very, very careful about reducing emissions prior to implementing SRM through these vast arrays of mirrors. The ideal sequence would be put out the mirrors first, deploy the mirrors first, cool the planet, and then we can safely remove the particulates. But right now, these particulates are literally keeping us alive. And to make the point, Ray is going to sing the Bee Gees song, Staying Alive. Just kidding. Okay.
You know I can't do the falsetto anymore.
Oh, you can't? Okay, no, Nolan's gonna sing it for us then. Staying alive, staying alive. Staying alive. Wow! Bum, 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 bum. Okay, so you get the point.
Not quite. I think we need another verse.
You can't tell by the way I use my words. Come on, where's the man who's trying to talk? Look at that, because this is welcome. Get your clothes, I'm going to turn it back. Michelle Beck, you can look the other way. You need time to understand the nigga got your back on, man. Maybe some of them.
We're probably upsetting our office neighbor,
Oh,
actually.
okay. Sorry. Okay, back. Quiet.
Glad we recorded that.
Yeah, me too. I'm kind of glad, a little bit terrified, but anyway. Okay. Thank you for that. But yeah,
You know, oh, no. Actually, Ray, go ahead.
No, I was gonna do a totally new topic, so go ahead.
I was just in a grocery store the other day, and I went by a magazine, and I think the title, if I remember right, it was Climate Wars, and it was like photos that kind of mimicked the war ads of the 40s. But essentially, like the claim of the article in the magazine was that we need to start directing our resources and our attention to the climate crisis like we did World War II, where we allotted all of our resources, the whole economy shifted towards producing the infrastructure and the systems required to feed people and clothe people and also build tanks, but our tanks are just going to be mirrors. But I think when that, I don't know, I think there's an issue of allowing that shift to occur in the collective consciousness that this is like equivalent to a world war, but it's no one person against one other person. It's just us against us. And but I think once that shift is made, it will be like this incredibly accelerated like, what is it? Like we will dispatch all these mirrors and all the required technologies way faster than we would normally think is possible. Yeah, I don't know. I just think that's where I'm at.
I think that's an important step in the solar radiation management, because the buy-in for it has to be big, and it's a political solution that won't be an obstacle to so many different industries. So once it catches on, and we realize we have to do something, I think it's something that people can embrace quickly, as opposed to, people are making money with fossil fuels. People are making money with cows. So there's always resistance for that. But when there's not a resistance, we see something like the hole in the ozone layer. All the countries got together and said, so we're going to stop with the Freon. And they went, yeah, okay, everybody signs it, and it was done. And now we're rebuilding our Freon, because big Freon wasn't strong enough to oppose it. And there wasn't enough opposition in all the different countries that are using the chemicals. So they switched to, unfortunately, hydrofluorocarbons that are like 1,000 times worse than carbon dioxide in the atmosphere for climate change. And so the same people got together again and said, oh, should we switch to natural sources where we can actually use seawater as a refrigerant? Should we do that instead? And so they went, yeah. So they signed off on it. I think there was some resistance from the Americans. They may not have signed it yet because I don't know, there's money to be made. Usually is the reason why things get stalled. But in general, the concept is intact, that as soon as people get the idea, then it is something that can, with a few pen strokes, be put into action. But what's going to get them motivated to really believe in it? Because part of it is that denial that oil companies are denying climate change. Once we're past that point, we have people like Rex Tillerson saying, okay, fine, climate change is real. It's anthropogenic, we're creating it, but it shouldn't affect our policy. So that's where the conversation has gotten, except for the complete people trying to confuse the conversation with 10-year-old outdated arguments. Once the conversation gets to a certain place, we're able to accomplish so much more because there won't be that opposition. In fact, why wouldn't the fossil fuel companies be enthusiastic about getting a little bit of the heat taken off of them? We'll solve part of the climate crisis with this solution. It's kind of weird that we haven't seen a lot of that lately. We haven't seen the fossil fuel industry point at the agriculture industry and say, it's not us, it's them. There's this kind of a tie between sectors that they don't sass each other that way and tattle on each other, and you see little instances of it, but in general, they're in total lockstep with denying climate change. So like I said, once we get past that point, they're able to actually help to motivate these kind of solutions. And I think that some of the greenwashers are likely to be in the middle of that. Like Richard Branson is a fossil fuel user. His airlines rely on fossil fuels. So he's able to take that little middle ground and be a so-called environmental industrialist. And really, when it gets down to it, Elon Musk is a industrialist. So a lot of these guys have an opportunity to take a place and convince the industries that we all have to do things, and it's in their best interest to try to start reducing the impact on our planet.
Brilliant analysis, and so true. And what all this begs for is a holistic analysis and redesign of our entire footprint. And there's the footprint that, just happens from, running our global economy and living our entire set of living arrangements, whether it's eating, construction, transportation, leisure, whatever. And then there's the intentional footprint that we can create, with, for example, floating arrays of mirrors doing the SRM. But anyway, I'm just kind of lumping it all together. Our total footprint, both the kind of the accidental footprint, if you will, as well as the intentional footprint of SRM. So, let's get it on. And, and what a great opportunity the Block Party is to address all those, because we've got a full 24 hours. Let's get it on. And this will be every single week, every single Friday, spilling into Saturday, starting at 6 a.m. Pacific time Friday and going for a full 24 hours until 6 a.m. Saturday. So, we've got SRM for that 2-hour block from 7 to 9 a.m. Pacific time Friday. And then later, Silas in his email, he's proposing that he and I and Alan Savory meet on Thursday for an initial broadcast recorded discussion that would just be the three of us. And then Friday, we open it up to the public and to the collective intelligence and build off of that. So Friday, we're going to address head on SRM, veganism, and holistic land management, as well as separately, thanks to Michael Gaio, writing a new story for humanity, right? You have to, just considering that we're a species that thrives on stories. We run on stories, right? That's how we make sense of the world.
Oh, you did the segue. That was the segue I needed for the thing that I wanted to talk about. Everybody's talking about Joaquin Phoenix's Oscar speech. The other thing about the Oscars is Bong Joon-ho, who is the director of Okja and also the director of Snowpiercer, that movie that I had mentioned earlier about the last remnants of humanity on a morality train ride. The last remnants of the human race, all on a train. And it's, I mean, it's almost a trilogy in a sense that the film that won Parasite is all about social structures, social caste. I haven't seen it yet, but that's definitely what Snowpiercer was about. And of course, Okja is about a low emissions pig. And so a lot of attention is going to be given to these other films, which is great. He went vegan while he was making Okja, and for some reason is not 100% vegan anymore. We don't know exactly the reasons why, but once vegan, it's just a matter of time before all those excuses are removed and all the ex-vegans can become vegan again. But of particular importance is this Snowpiercer's on Netflix. People will start to watch it, and it really emphasizes, no matter, it's just kind of a tool of the storytelling. He wants to get everybody onto this train so he could tell his morality tale of all the poor people at the back and the rich people at the front. But the framework of it is that, geoengineering works. It works so well that our foolish human race put aerosols into the atmosphere that they couldn't take down, and they froze the planet. So on one side, it's based on this fear of geoengineering solutions, of which we probably should have a certain amount of caution. Dealing with that fear is part of our obstacles here, but it's definitely getting into the spotlight and saying that it works. This is one of the approaches, is to block out the sun and stop that heating of the planet, so we don't have to worry as much about the carbon that's in the atmosphere. So that was a good thing that he swept the awards.
Well, what you just said at the very end there about, hey, we can, do geoengineering so that we don't have to worry about the carbon. That's actually the biggest argument that the anti-geoengineering crowd makes about geoengineering, that it says, hey, if we do that, then there won't be any pressure on humanity to reduce carbon, right?
And as a vegan activist, I'm totally familiar with that mindset, because that's exactly what's happening with the 350.org. I was just reading Bill McKibben's nonsense today about how he's saying that, veganism is just one of those little things like changing your light bulbs. It's not going to change anything. Do it. You'll feel better about yourself. You're doing your little thing, but you have to support 350.org to get that policy. So all else is irrelevant. So obviously there's this hyper focus. I just responded to an email where I was actually promoting SRM and as one of the solutions, because, and it was largely an agricultural news group, and they're saying that we just have to concentrate on mitigating fossil fuels. We need that one solution. Everything else is a distraction. And I said, that is exactly what's called a silver bullet solution, silver bullet mentality, where only one thing is going to fix the world. And vegans are accused of it all the time. Quite often as a straw man argument. I don't think vegans are really saying that. We're saying we've got this incredible tool called agriculture that we could shift this system and change so much of what we've done to the planet. Maybe there's some that are saying you don't need to do any of that. All you need to do is go vegan. But any rational conversation is certainly founded in agriculture is one of the systems that we have to change. And this idea that everything else is is something you just put to the side. That's usually a straw man argument made by the opposition, saying this is what vegans are saying, even when we're not.
Yeah, beautiful. You know, I predict and proclaim the end of the era of straw man arguments, one-dimensional thinking, zero-dimensional thinking in the case of money, and proclaim the era of the holistic, looking at Mother Earth as a whole and looking at all of the actions that we can take as a whole. Some solutions are going to need to be implemented sequentially, others simultaneously. Let's figure out the whole of it holistically, right?
Mm-hmm. And Jamie, you said about storytelling. They are presenting a story where veganism is derailing the climate change movement. It's not. It's. I mean, so much emphasis, so much expansion of solutions. That's not derailing anything. It's derailing their monomaniacal desire to shift all the economy over towards their green solution. And they're coming up with a lot of resistance. So they think they need the biggest hammer in the world in order to get policies through the government, and they're probably right. But that doesn't mean that all other ideas are stupid. All other ideas are ineffective. This kind of mentality just makes them. They're going to look like in the history books, like complete asses, and that's
Totally.
And that's one thing that I think we really need to focus on with the narrative and mythology. They're creating a mythology that isn't going to stand. That people are going to look back and go, why did these people who call themselves environmentalists lie when they've known for decades the truth about agriculture? Why did they lie so much? And the excuse is, well, we really wanted our policies. It's going to sound really ineffective, and you're just going to have this deep sigh of sorrow that so much more could have been done, because climate change is here. It's not a matter of whether whether it's going to affect our lives or not. It's going to affect our lives. Is it going to collapse our society? That's what I'm interested in. Are we going to be wiped off the planet as a mass human extinction? This is, unless Guy McPherson is right and we're done in a decade, then it's not really where I want to focus. If he is right, then I think we better focus on it. We always have to focus on the truth of what the science is telling us.
Well, it's interesting. You'll hear Guy McPherson during the 12-minute video that's on the Collective Intelligence Block Party page on Radish. You'll hear him say, because I ask him point blank, I say, hey, Guy, you've been saying for quite some time that we're in this predicament that has no solution, right? And we're all going to die. Now that you're hearing, that you've heard and looked at Dr. Ye Tao's solution from Harvard, what do you think? And he said, look, I thought we were totally doomed and that there was no solution until I started talking with engineers like you guys about SRM. And now I'm seeing it differently, basically, right? That's what he said. And that's just, because I've been having this conversation with Guy for years. At first, when I started talking with Guy in 2017, I was like, well, shoot, can't we put like big solar shields up in space or this or that? And then for a while, I was looking at putting reflective materials in the deserts in the form of vast canopies. But when I heard Dr. Ye Tao's solution from Harvard, I was just blown away. It's like, this is it. It's so clear. In terms of the main solution, there are other solutions for doing SRM that are also important, like ICE 911. Go to ice911.org. They've got a great solution for preserving the land-based ice and sea-based ice that we currently have, polar ice caps, Greenland, etc. So I really see a combination of ICE 911 solution and Dr. Ye Tao's solution. But Dr. Ye Tao's is really the big guns. That's the Monty Python foot. The ICE 911 is more preserve the ice that we have. But if we just did that, that's not enough. We need fresh, new reflective capacity to cool the planet. Anyway, I love this conversation, Ray and everyone, because we're looking at things holistically. And we need to come up with a holistic plan, not one based on some very narrow-minded narrative like we're talking about, Ray, where, oh, well, we have to focus on this because, you know, humanity can only handle one thing, and it better be, you know, decarbonization through reducing fossil fuels. See, I think a lot of their motivation comes from, and exactly, Al Gore and his buddies and a whole bunch of folks are all going very long investment-wise on green technologies, and good for them. But they're waiting for this big payday when a carbon tax is implemented that targets fossil fuels. And then
It's also about hogging the microphone. Sometimes, you know, in the controlling the narrative so that it maximizes their effectiveness, which I guess people do. People want to emphasize their effectiveness, but who are you clawing down clawing down amazing solutions in order to aggrandize your particular goal? That's not being a hero for the environment. That's being evil. And if you're doing it because you know, there's only so many donors out there. We're a donor-based organization. We don't want the donor base to go, oh, wow. Sailesh says 87% of climate change is attributable to animal agriculture. Sorry, guys, we're pulling the plug. And some people will. And really, the more hard-nosed they are about animal agriculture not being a solution, the more they deserve to have the plug pulled on their funding.
Well, this is what I think. We can all work together. We can all work together. We can all work together every day to solve all the problems in the world. That's all I have to say.
Well, you're our Betsy Ross, and that should be the new planetary anthem, not national anthem, planetary anthem.
Well, Al Gore's an evangelical Christian, so I don't know. We got to get him singing some songs with us or something.
Man, what a great conversation. Well, I'd love to hear from everyone. I can see that we're putting Uncle Frank to sleep. Hey, Uncle Frank, wake up. It's time to save life on Earth. It's kind of like that quote from Blade Runner, wake up, it's time to die. But in this case, wake up, it's time to live. It's time to save life on Earth. So, all right. Thanks, Uncle Frank. Anyway, love to hear from everyone. So please, especially if you haven't spoken or if you haven't sung yet, please jump in.
I'll say something. I'm trying to clean up my very dirty house because I've been working so hard on all this, these projects related to this. And so but I'm listening, and I love listening to things while I'm getting work done. But I will say that I never heard of SRM until maybe a week ago, and I was just kind of thinking, oh yeah, we'll just go vegan and that's all we need. I mean, you know, stop animal agriculture, that'll be fast enough. And so I'm really, really glad to hear all this stuff. And when you guys talk, you know, I've heard that in order to avoid going senile, it's good to stretch your brain and, you know, listen to people like you guys who use big words, and you're really and you're really super intellectual, and I can't hardly even understand you because of I'm just such a simple person. But my brain, my neural pathways are getting, there are new ones being formed. And they're all like going, all my brain cells are going, yay, yay. I don't know what they're saying, but it sounds good.
I think I'm a simple person. I'm not a scientist. I'm a media guy.
I know, but I'm kind of joking.
But that makes me think, because I said to my parents were asking me what I was doing for the weekend a couple months ago, and they said, I'm going to a VED Talk. It's a vegan TED Talk. And they said, what's that? I said, it's like a TED Talk. And they went, what's a TED Talk?
Well, listen.
I
you
think
guys-
people should watch more TED Talks.
Well, what we're creating here is really like a network of TED Talks that are all hyper connected. And what Patricia, the joy, the rapture that Patricia is experiencing inside her own cranium is actually, yes, there's a lot of new connections opening up inside her cranium, but also her cranium is now connected to our craniums. And that's what's, but the way you just described it, Patricia, is a great metaphor for the hyper connectedness that we're now creating for humanity through conversations. Conversations are the high speed superconductor that connects us to each other. Our neurons are already inside our craniums. They're doing just fine. They're talking with each other based on whatever information is available. But now we're creating the ability for this transcranial hyperconnectivity through video conferencing, through actual conversations in real time. This is just a whole new level of connectivity beyond the text-based connectivity that we've all become entranced with. Oh, it's all about text. I'm going to post something on my Facebook page. I'm going to post some text. Oh, I'm going to do a Google search. I'm going to type in some text so I can find other text that was put there 10 years ago. What we're doing right here, this is all real time. What's coming out of my mouth didn't come out of you're not watching something that came out of my mouth 10 years ago. You're watching something that's coming out of my mouth in real time.
Yeah.
This is part of the revolution. So there's really two aspects of the revolution: real time and real timeness, and the rich high bandwidth face-to-face gesticulations, facial expressions, tonality, dare I say singing, dare I say dancing, right? This is how we communicate in super high bandwidth, right? See, Nolan and I are even like getting in sync, right? Our biorhythms are like sync. Patricia, see, it's working. And you know what? We're bringing in yet another aspect that we didn't do very much in corporate America, which is having fun, playing. Because these forms of play, these art forms, music, dance, acting, miming, you know, the satire, I mean, all these different shades of media, right, of forms of communication add to the richness. There are more colors on our palette. So anyway, welcome to the future. This is collective intelligence in action, and we're now taking it to the world with the block party, among other events.
I'm really, what I'm thinking
Now,
of,
Patricia, we can't hear you at the moment, which is kind of
Really?
weird.
Huh.
Now we can.
okay. Well, you're really helping me to hone in on the topic that I would like to facilitate a conversation about. And that is, how do we create that healthy community wherever we are, in these conversations, in our meetings, and these, like, delighting in each other, encouraging. And you're such a great model, Jamin, and I really appreciate you thinking that I'm like your sister. How old are you anyway? Am I your big sister?
I'm 24. No, I'm 51. 51.
Okay, so I'm definitely your older sister, but yeah, but I feel like I'm 19. That's when I traveled when I was 19, as I shared that story with you guys at our thing. And my life just opened up just by traveling for 13 months by myself, not even knowing where I was going, and ending up in India and Afghanistan, Pakistan. So what I'm trying to say is that I want to talk about creating healthy community, like right between two people, and that means aspects of like, how do we share power? How do we share time? How do we make sure everybody's voice is heard? How do we resolve conflicts that come up? What do we do when we're triggered? What do we do when we get scared? Like, I thought for sure, Jamin, you were leaving me out of Radish. Well, I wasn't positive, but I was a little scared. Like, well, maybe he's really nice to everybody. In fact, I've met people like this. They're really nice to everybody, but behind the scenes, it's like, I get targeted. I've been a scapegoat a lot in my life, and still have some triggers. So I'm so relieved to know that we were separated at birth. I'm sad that happened. That'll be a great.
I've never heard that reaction before. I think we were separated at birth. Oh, that's so sad. There was a compliment in there somewhere, but
yeah, so I want to just have this conversation. How can we create either a land-based community, which I yearn for, and I was in Berkeley for 6 months, and I mean, last year, 2-3 years, I've been there on and off, and I kept wanting to leave this area and be in the big city. But now I realize this is where I'm 99.9% sure this is where I'm supposed to be. And if everything does fall apart, just in case, I mean, I don't think it's going to happen, but in case, everybody needs to come out here. We'll be ready for you. And but I want people to come, really people to be real time, sitting around the campfire, dancing, meditating, preparing food together, and being on these great video conferences. Of course, we're going to be totally online and plugged in. We actually have high-speed internet out in the middle of nowhere because a rich lawyer bought land here in this. It was like supposed to be a Christian community, but you don't have to be a Christian to live here. But this rich lawyer he made high-speed internet go out in the middle of nowhere where we are. We're really, and so, we're plugged in. So I don't want to hear any of this stuff about Arkansas. Don't make fun of Arkansas.
All right. Well, speaking of Arkansas, Dharmendra has an opportunity to speak. So let's turn it over to Dharmendra.
Thank you, Jamin. The only reason I have my video off is because I'm eating, and I don't like to eat when I'm presenting myself. So that's the only reason. I was really hearing what you were saying, Patricia, about healthy communities, and the only way, there's more than one way, but I think one of the most essential ingredients is the capacity to be awake, present, and aware to your experience through your heart. And because I've seen people in life with all the greatest intentions in the world have these objectives that they want to carry out, but they only go so far and then they peter out. Because at a certain point, people forget who they were when they created that objective, because they're in a different part of themselves at a certain point and they give up on it. I just think that something along the lines of deepening our awareness through meditation, obviously, and that can be either in a group setting or individual setting, if we really want to get realistic about creating healthy communities, we have to find out, first of all, in ourselves, what creates unhealth in us and between us. And that, of course, some of us know through certain practices we're already doing together what shadows are, and that's unhealthy, obviously. And then, when you get into your genius and your gift, then you can start thinking about and getting realistic about healthy communities. And those can even start to evolve exponentially as we open to higher influences in a really intentional and conscious way, not in a make-believe, fantasy, imaginary way. So I think one of the biggest things is to learn how to become centered in your essence and your truth and who you are, apart from how society has tried to define you, how your parents have tried to define you, how your teachers have tried to define you, how your friends have tried to define you, how life in general and all its conditioning influences is trying to stick labels on you that you become identified with and then act accordingly, which are all just defense mechanisms. That's not healthy. What is healthy is finding out who you are apart from all that and starting to learn to come from that place of essence. And by essence, I mean something that's not contrived, pre-thought of, made up, or inherited from somebody else. It's your own intelligence, your own understanding that you're contributing to whatever environment you're in. That's healthy. And the only way to develop that, obviously, is through becoming more meditative, which just means remembering yourself more, becoming more mindful, becoming more aware, more grounded, more intelligent, and coming from your center, not from your mental concepts, not from your emotional hangups, not from your not from your limitations of your physical form, but learning to remember how to come from your true heart. And care, and everything you do takes caring into consideration of others, as well as your own mindfulness of yourself and how you're expressing yourself, and also is in harmony with all of life and what the implications of what you're going to do are, and as it affects everything around you in life and in the environment and with other forms of life and with your fellow human beings. And basically, that's kind of how I can see that if we want to create healthy communities, they can come out of learning about that, moving from our center, coming from who we really are, from our essence. And then we can start to help people to wake up and accelerate the consciousness that has been so dumbed down by all the conditioning influences in our life. And then we can get realistic about coming from our hearts in a real way, not an intellectual, conceptual way or an intentional way that is all the greatest intent in the world, but without the capacity to realize your intent, at some point it's going to go off track. So that's just something I'd like to share, because I do have, I believe, something of useful to contribute to what is a healthy community and how that might, we might go about that. I mean, obviously we have to know what an unhealthy community is and how we already trying to work through getting out of repeating that, because that's basically the script we've all been handed by our well-intentioned parents, teachers, and everybody else.
Beautiful, Dharmendra. Wow.
And I appreciate that. I definitely agree with all that you said. And I think that, the more tools we have, like the compassionate, I don't know if we need a separate tool library, or the tool library will have different categories, right? And so there can be the community building, a healthy community building tools. And so all those things that help us do what you said, there's lots of them out there, and there's practices, and the more tools and practices and skills we can develop, the more it can be we're going to be healthier. So and being present, like I know that I'm being present with how I'm coming into this group with VW26 and now the Radish. I feel really hopeful because my true self, my little child like demeanor, and really I did get an A+ in logic though in college. So watch
Wow.
out. It was the only class that was easy for me. I didn't graduate from college, I'm proud to say, but I like to act really goofy at times. And that way, anybody who wants to take advantage of me, then they think I'm really stupid. And then I go, whoa, I'm the smartest person around. You can't pull that over me. And I'm going to protect you from all the people that you're trying to get. No, I mean, that's my fun way of expressing how much I've been hurt in my life by people who have thought, oh, who have treated me in ways that were very hurtful. And so I'm making fun of it, but I deal with it a lot. So I was trying to say that coming into these new groups, I noticed myself getting triggered by little things like, oh no, is this like these other groups? Am I safe? Am I gonna be all like excited about this like I've been in so many other groups, and then my hopes have been dashed to the ground? And I noticed myself thinking that. Yeah, I could use one of those 24-hour block parties to share all my sad story.
I think we're going to have to open up a special channel for you, Patricia. It goes 24/7. We'll just have a drone that just follows you around everywhere, even when you're sleeping. Anyway.
But I'll conclude by saying that every day I discover this is a safe space, and we can make it even safer and more nurturing and more encouraging. And the biggest, I know you guys have never heard this, but the biggest room in the world is a room for improvement.
The biggest what in the world?
Room.
Is the what?
The room.
Yeah, but the biggest room is what? Is what did you say?
The biggest room
Uh-huh.
is the room for improvement.
Ah. Well, very good. Hey, speaking of room, Shiloh is requesting some room to speak. Shiloh, please take it away.
Hi, Patricia, I just wanted to say, I feel like you're coming directly from the heart. So I see that in you. I don't think you're hiding anything. And I also think people need to be able to come as they are in any case. And I just also wanted to say, it is hard to come into new groups and you don't know if you're going to be accepted. These do seem like really loving people. And for me, I'm still struggling because I'm not vegan. And I hope that that doesn't turn you guys off of who I am. I'm definitely working towards the greater good. I suffered with some health issues for like 6 or 7 years. And I'm finally in getting better with stuff, but I have changed to a high fat, low carb diet, which doesn't mean that I eat meat. I also support your veganism and going full vegan by 2026. But I hope that this group is open to people. I hope there's a spectrum and we can see that there's a variety of people that want to work towards a greater community. And people are open to, I love vegan food, don't get me wrong. I live in a community that has a lot of vegan people, just the state that I'm in Washington State in Olympia or near Olympia. Anyway, I'm not against it. I also would hope that you're not against me because I'm not fully there. So I just wanted to put that out there and make a connection with you in that way, if that makes sense. That's it.
Well, let me step in and say, first of all, two things. Number one, this particular meeting is not, it's not explicitly a vegan meeting. Obviously, we're we're beyond vegan friendly, but it's not a vegan meeting. So anyone and everyone is welcome, regardless of what your diet is. And even in the vegan meetings, which we have one today at 3:00 in the afternoon, Vegan World 2026 Collective Intelligence, that is a vegan meeting, but Shiloh and everyone is welcome to that meeting as well, including non-vegans. And, you know, that community is, as far as I'm concerned, led by the great Dr. Silas Rao, who I mentioned earlier, who we're setting up some meetings for later this week. And when I first met Silas, being vegan wasn't even on my radar as something that I was even like striving for. And when I met Silas and company, we started having these great conversations, and I was able to just very open-mindedly learn all about veganism and the importance of it. And I'm in the process of going vegan, but I'm still not 100% there. And I feel totally loved and supported, and it's awesome. So it is a transition. There is a lot that we need to work out to make that transition both more appealing and more accessible to more and more people. You know, that's one of the things that we're taking on with Collective Intelligence, is how to make that a much more viable option for everyone, ideally. But anyway, but to answer your question, you are absolutely welcome here and in all meetings that I have anything to do with. So, and anyway, but even within Vegan World 2026, non-vegans are very much welcome.
Yeah, and I would say that I really think that vegans need to create spaces where anyone can come in and feel comfortable and not pressured. It kind of reminds me of church, where like when I first came to this community where there's mostly Christians, I was not a Christian. In fact, the first thing I told these people who I met at a potluck, it seemed like a miracle. I found out they're Christians. I say, I'm not a Christian and I don't want to be converted, because I was so tired of Christians asking me, are you a Christian? And I say, do you believe in Jesus as your savior? And I say, no. And they go, well, you're going to hell. And it's like, well, I don't want to be a Christian if there's people like you in that club. But these people were so accepting, and they even kind of laughed nervously when I said that, you know, I don't want to be a Christian and don't try to convert me. But they proceeded to love me and my family and accept me, even to the point where I said I could lead Christian songs, which I knew because I grew up in a Christian church. And even in their service, they would let me lead songs. And then my heart was softened, and I was willing to look more into the reality of what it meant to follow Jesus. And then I decided, you know what, I'm going to try out this path of following Jesus. And, you know, it's been 20 years now, and I've been really happy I made that decision. But if they had, I think it's the same with veganism. It's like, we just need to love people as they are and not even have any expectations or attachment. We're not loving you, non-vegans, because we want you to do something. We just want to create an atmosphere where we all can love each other and thrive. So and if I said anything that made it seem like I assumed that everyone was vegan in this room, or that you needed to become vegan, I realized I need I would like to be more aware that, you know, that not everybody is vegan, not to ever give that impression. So I have a little song I made that I changed, you know, in the Christian song, they will know we are Christians by our love, by our love. They will know we are Christians by our love. And I've actually said this to Christians. I said, I'm changing that. They will know we are vegans by our love, by our love. They will know we are vegans by our love. So I'm trying to inspire Christians that vegans are about love too. So I hope that helps.
One of the things about the activism that goes on in the Vegan World 2026, it's got the word vegan in it. And that's a target. It's an objective over between now and 2026. So conceivably it could be non-vegan up until 2026. But because we're looking at things from a systemic point of view, it's this big, broad conversation now, rather than, you know, the outreach where a vegan standing on a street corner goes, hey, you could be vegan, you know, are you vegan? You're not vegan? You know, you put this pressure on somebody and they're just as likely to push back as to accept what you have to say. One thing that I've often said is I'm not interested in individual vegan conversion. I'm concerned about the movement. And I would agree that, like, as an environmentalist, is one more vegan going to make the difference? Is myself as one vegan, am I making the difference that's going to be relevant in the world? I've done as much as can be relevant for my footprint and my, you know, ethical footprint as well. But the movement is what's important. And if somebody can't be immediately involved in that movement, 100% vegan and part of that movement, what I look for instead is this person going to be part of that wave when the vegan wave comes? And I've got in my mind, you know, this person's got it all. They've got it figured out. They've got their thumb on the pulse. They understand where everything's going. When the wave comes, their surfboard's all shined up and ready to go. I've got no concerns. And that's very liberating for me as an activist, because I know how it is on the other side. I've been with the SAVE movement and I'm still with the SAVE movement and support them very much. And I think everybody should bear witness and go and witness the animals that are going to slaughter. But that kind of pressure where your effectiveness feels like you have to save every last animal. Every last animal has to be saved, and every human has to be converted to veganism and you know, pull the animals out of their mouths. Those animals aren't part of this framework that we're looking at. So now we have the ability to you know, engage with people who eat meat and say, well, how would you feel if I, you know, removed your dairy industry? I don't have the power to do that. I think the dairy industry is going to die all on its own. Joaquin Phoenix might have pushed it a little bit along at the Oscar speech, talking about baby cows being taken away. These are all parts of like a societal shift of ethics. So when people are opposed to that, if people are thinking that dairy is something that we need and it's got to exist forever, the consumption in North America is going down, but the support for that industry is going up. And the desire to ship it internationally and have the same amount of production, yet trade it with everybody else in the world at the same rate as we're discovering that it's not a unique source of calcium, or it's not really that it's actually a very Eurocentric phenomenon that people are able to drink milk at all into adulthood. That's, you know, for us to be promoting it as a food group, and in Canada we no longer do, but the USDA is coming out with their dietary recommendations this year. Are they going to recommend to the great melting pot of the United States that everybody should consume dairy? I think it's time for that to stop. And the dairy industry says we need that. We need the USDA to be our spokesperson to promote our industry. Do you? That's not a sustainable business model. It's not a sustainable industry. It's not a future-proofed industry. It is a sunset industry, which means that you have to start thinking about getting out of it as a practitioner, as a business person, as an entrepreneur. Every farmer, every dairy farmer should be thinking about, if not right away, do they really believe that they're going to be handing their property over to their children to become dairy farmers? Many of them don't. I mean, the next generations are much more wide awake than anybody before because they have access to information that we never did when we were kids. I grew up in Manitoba. I learned about rotational farming in school. I wasn't in an agricultural part of Manitoba, but we learned all about agriculture. And then I became an environmentalist, and then people are saying, well, you know how you could make agriculture better is you could do rotational grazing. And when we're not, I learned in high school that we were doing rotational grazing, that there's a logical, you rotate your pastures and nitrify the soil. We're not doing that. We're just, farming corn over and over and over again, and then until the ground is dead and then move on. That's business now. So, this is the march of progress. That apparently that was all the wind I had.
All right.
May I jump in? For a
Please,
second?
Dharmendra, please.
I just wanted to address something that Ray was not directly alluding to, and Patricia, but one of the things too about transitioning to veganism is not everybody's an all at once, everything in right this moment kind of person. Most people aren't. Most people are more gradual in their shifting of their life, of their behaviors, because your behaviors is what determines pretty much everything else, how you act. And also I think it's good to realize, the more meditative you become, and I'll just use meditation a lot because it's one of the key factors in waking up, along with going vegan. And I'm going to relate the two in the sense that the more conditioning you have, the harder it is to change that conditioning. So in order for a person with a lot of conditioning to jump straight into, meaning a lot of wound patterns, that's what conditioning is. It's how much wounding you've taken in and absorbed in your life. And you can't just throw all that off instantly. Some people can, but that's very rare. It's 1 in 100. So that conditioning, to jump straight into veganism is like you're taking all your clothes off and you're totally exposed, literally taking your skin off, basically, compared to how you used to feel. You feel everything. You're going to feel everything. So it's a heightening of your senses. It's a heightening of everything. You pretty much wake up, several degrees, if not dozens of degrees, just by going vegan. It totally changes your whole sensory system, your chemical system. You're not absorbing things anymore that dumb you down and dirty and corrupt your chemistry, because you're not eating death, you're not eating suffering, torture, mutilation, fear, anger, all the horror, all the things that we know animals feel just the same as we do. So it's maybe wise for a lot of people to not jump in so quickly, to become informed. I would say the best steps in the beginning are start to watch some of the films, not the really heavy duty ones right away, but some that start talking about what's going on with the meat dairy industry and being subsidized by the American government and those kind of things that just talk about facts. And then slowly you can get into the full-on what happens in the slaughterhouse to the animals and what they go through and what they do to baby chicks and I won't even give away any of the secrets. It's just it's stuff that eventually you get the stomach for, and eventually you just understand that if you can't feel that in your heart, then you're not really present on this planet. Your part of you is somewhere else, and it's a hard planet to be on and really be present and awake and aware and fully vegan and fully accepting of what that entails and how it makes you feel and how you sense things and how much clearer your thoughts become and everything else. So it's a lot like meditation. You don't just start meditating one day and all of a sudden you're fully aware and mindful and loving and considerate. It takes time. So I guess I just want to throw that out there into the general public. It's like, for most people, it probably is good to go gradual and start getting informed first, because the more you're informed, the quicker it will make sense to you to actually start to take on the vegan mantle, you know? And the more you give yourself time and allow yourself to doubt, allow yourself to go through resistance, allow yourself to go through all those things, and just slowly let yourself becoming informed just outweigh all of that, because it will if you give it time. Because you'll see, if you're an intelligent, halfway intelligent person, the facts are overwhelming of the degree of suffering that man's food choices and clothing choices and bathing accoutrement choices and everything else is causing all the other living beings on this planet. It's overwhelming. It's insane. But to take it one step at a time is also a good thing. Or to go 90% and then take the other. You know, it doesn't matter. Whatever the percentage is be compassionate with yourself. Because if you can't start with yourself, how are you going to? What compassion are you going to have developed for anybody else? We always have to start with ourselves, don't we? We're the ones we got to deal with from beginning to end in this life. We're the only ones we get to come in with and the only ones we get to leave with. So that might be the one we want to make sure, if there's anything we want to bring into the world, we do it with ourselves first. So to be compassionate is to allow ourselves the time and allow ourselves the resistance and the doubt and the cynicism and the whatever we got to go up against the veganism, or just sheer habits of conditioning in the way we eat and what we like the tastes of and blah, 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 blah. And until all that's run out of steam, well, we're getting more and more informed about what's actually going on out there in big ag and how it's affecting the climate and everything else. There, I'm out of steam now.
Beautiful, Dharmendra. Patricia, I know you're waiting, so jump in.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I think what I heard from Shiloh was that you had been struggling with health issues for 7 years or so. That's a long time, and you found that eating animal products help you to finally find that health that you've been yearning for. And I couldn't imagine being in that situation. I mean, it sounds like you would like to go vegan, that that would be your preference, but it's not for your own health. It's not possible. So I just want to acknowledge that and make sure that I was accurate there. And just say that I definitely feel grateful, because it was easy for me to first go vegetarian overnight. I didn't think fish had feelings, so when I was 18, I did still eat fish and I ate dairy and eggs. But when I realized, the more I feel fortunate, because it was just like an awakening, and it was easy. And when I finally realized, yeah, fish feel feelings, okay, I got to give up fish too. And so I was a vegetarian for about 35 years, maybe 40. And then I realized that the dairy and egg industry hurt the animals even more than meat. And so I watched a 5-minute video. It did take me a year. I was like, okay, it took me a year, even though I knew that suffering. Then I watched a 5-minute video and then I go, okay, I'm vegan. And that was 5 years ago. But I don't expect everyone to do that. It was, and I also I don't know why I had the capacity to do that. And I really don't think I can take credit for it in a way, because it was so easy. And I'll also say that I think if it was, between my health, if I really thought I really need to eat animal products in order to be healthy, so I can serve this movement of helping to create a world where all life can thrive, then I would be willing to do that, knowing that, hey, I'm doing my best. And I would definitely want to be in an environment where I was accepted. And I also realized, one of the reasons we use the name vegan, like even the conversation in our Interfaith Vegan Coalition came up last night. Somebody wanted to change the name to a more generic name, the Golden Rule Coalition. And we agreed that we do want to attract vegans and vegan allies. There are vegan allies, people who are not criticizing us. It isn't easy to be vegan in this, as Melanie Joy calls it, a carnist world. So for people like you, Shiloh, who are encouraging and supportive, and you don't get upset because we're talking about veganism, you're an important part of our world, but many of us have felt rejected, isolated, criticized. And so we kind of need to huddle in some ways. Yeah, we need to know, oh, that is a vegan organization. That's vegan, a vegan world is what we want. And so the word vegan can kind of rally us together, those of us who are passionate about veganism and who are allies. Thanks.
One thing about the Vegan World 2026, Sailesh himself, his first book that he published, the Carbon Dharma, he got the foreword written by Brian D. McLaren, who's a writer for the Emerging Church. He's not vegan. He's said as a pastor he's not ready to take that position of being vegan, although it clearly suggests that he's read the book and understands the transformation that Sailesh is describing in it and wants to be part of it. He just doesn't think that this is the right time for it, or that time, 2011, I think. So who knows how much has changed since then. But he's very outspoken about climate change and reaching the church. So that gives a little bit of a sense of that Sailesh is the leader of the base camp. He's very open to non-vegan partners. One of the aspects of veganism that the vegan movement is this non-violence that we're promoting. We're looking at everything from a systemic point of view and acknowledging the violence in the system. Even in our, capitalism has a it grinds people up, people and animals and the environment. There's a really bad attitude towards what a resource is. Resources could mean anything. We've got the military industrial complex that we're dropping bombs as a resource. We've got the prison industrial complex where we've created this war on drugs just to keep this cycle of people in prison as profitability, as a way of making money, which, money is serving all the things that we recognize as evil. And that includes all the things that we're trying to accomplish in the climate change shift. So identifying the violence in our system, we're kind of using that as a shorthand for our vegan approach to a vegan world. A vegan world should be nonviolent. So how do we take the violence out of all these different systems? And, I've come across people who have said, well, my doctor says I have to eat meat. So to that, I wonder, does that mean that you can't fight against the agricultural system because you're taking part in it? I understand that argument is the hypocrisy of using something that you're against. It gets so ridiculous, especially in the environmental community. I remember the oil people defending the oil industry saying, "Oh, they've got a protest against fossil fuels." A bunch of people going out in kayaks and protesting pipelines going through British Columbia. Those kayaks are made out of plastic, which is a byproduct of the petroleum industry. So isn't that hypocrisy? Is it? Those people are living in a world where plastic is a necessity, and we would much rather it not be. You know, you live in the world that you live in, and then there's the world that you want. So a lot of this is about trying to find that world that you want to live in and start taking the steps towards it. So the being vegan, every person being vegan isn't the way where you start. That's, you know, the objective to where it ends. And the definition of a vegan world 2026, I find that a lot of people are fascinated when I say that it's not that every last person in the world is going to be vegan by 2026. It's that we will have a vegan ethic in our world. Well, we'll pass that tipping point where vegan ethic will be the foregone conclusion, and we can start creating names for people who feel that exploiting animals is okay. You know, find that opposite term. Rather than the fringe group called vegans, there'll be a fringe group called whatever it happens to be. Whether it's Melanie Joy's carnism, which isn't quite accurate because it's carn means meat. So it's very meat specific rather than animal specific. But you got to get the picture that this is about progress in a direction. And as for vegan activists, we really do go to places that others aren't ready to go. I'm part of the Drawdown Toronto organization, and I mentioned to them that one of the sectors, they've had a food sector summit where we got together and talked about food solutions, and then that was it. They went and moved on to other solutions, other summits, and we're finding solutions, but nothing was happening in the food solution. And they were a bit at a loss as to what to do. What sort of policies can we create? And I said, this isn't about policy. Vegans go out and they'll say that Rib Fest run by the Rotary Club. What's going on there? Is that good for the environment? Is there an opportunity to educate people there about the impact that they're having on the environment? And we go out and we protest at the gates of Rib Fest. They happen in every major city in Ontario and probably around the world. Variations of Rib Fests of different kinds of barbecue and so forth. So why is that like not on the radar of anybody that's not vegan? So you don't have to be vegan, but it really helps with the mentality of approaching the problem. If you ask people if they want to be vegan, the answer will be very small, but they have like surveys of people saying, would you like to see the end of slaughterhouses? And like 60% of people say yes. 60% of people aren't vegan. 60% of people said they want to see the end of slaughterhouses. So that suggests like, you know, we've got a zeitgeist that wants to have a less violent society. And we need to peel back the layers and invite people in. Moving the zeitgeist. Is that a pretentious word?
Totally. Well, you know, we're going to have, here's the thing, as we embrace collective intelligence and as we, you know, and which really means for the individual connecting with the global community and having conversations with whoever you want, not just whoever happens to be accessible to you in your family, your home, your neighborhood, or your office or at your local Starbucks, right? Everyone is accessible to you who's likewise willing to play, right? In this open way. So this planetary consciousness, this planetary brain is going to develop a whole new, you know, dimensional enhancement on the notion of a zeitgeist, right? And I mean, everything is going to change. The big picture, as I see it, is we're becoming a new species. We're going from, metaphorically, from unicellular, unihuman, to multicellular, multihuman, to the collective. We're becoming a collective in a much bigger, more systematic way due to this connective tissue that we're forming here with radical collective intelligence, or whatever form of collective superintelligence we ultimately go with.
You know, in 1781, something happened that supposedly, and it was with synchronous with the discovery of Uranus, that apparently we went from being a seven-centered being, William Herschel, the 1781. We went from being a seven-centered being, which everybody's familiar with, the seven chakras and all that, to being a nine-centered being. So actually, and we're actually a transitional species that in 2027 is going to be birthed a new type of being that actually will be a new species. And that sounds pretty far out, and it was received by a guy who was living in Spain about 30 years ago in a vision that lasted. A voice talked to him for 8 days. He didn't sleep or eat or anything for 8 days, and this voice told him all this stuff. And basically, the nine centers have all the 64 hexagrams of the I Ching that are DNA that science has proven that we have, actually. So it's actually based on real stuff. And there's actually a system that you can learn. It's even more accurate way more accurate and way more detailed and defined than astrology, actually. And it's way more accurate too, because astrology, if anybody knows really astrology, it's 3,000 years out of date. The signs are not where we call ourselves. They're way out. Yes.
Can you file those?
Yes, what are they?
I think they're for one of the phones.
Oh, are these the things that came from our new phones, that the tags that come off the boxes?
Maybe.
I'll just keep them in my office here.
Okay. I think that was.
When did Shiloh disappear? Did I chase her off? Was it while I was expounding?
Oh.
Yeah, Shiloh dropped off maybe 20 minutes ago or so, something like that. And she did mention that she was babysitting. Well, I'm super excited to report that we're getting lots of views and lots of comments and lots of likes based on the 12-minute video that Guy McPherson, Ye Tao, and I recorded last Friday. And lots of people saying that they are looking forward to Friday and looking forward to participating in the conversation. So it's catching on. And
what promotional materials do you have?
Oh, promotional materials, minimal. In fact, help us out, Ray. You know, you're the master.
Every rave needs a poster you can paste onto a lamppost.
Yeah, well, we do have that image that's on the homepage of Radish that says Collective Intelligence Block Party. Yeah, go ahead.
Is there like a digital version coming from Allison InZone?
Not that I'm aware, not that I've requested. All we have is just that image.
Oh, okay. For some reason, I thought that was like a prototype that they were.
Yeah.
I thought that's what you told me.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, anyway, I mean, we'll figure
Hey,
it out.
it looks good. I'm not
Yeah.
saying.
No, I love it. Yeah.
I just got
to see you guys in the next meeting.
All right, Dharmendra. Look forward to seeing you, buddy.
See you, Dharmendra.
Bye.
I just got a text from my brother. I saw the speech you wrote for Joaquin. I wish.
Speech for who?
Joaquin Phoenix.
Ah, right. That was you. Wow, Ray.
Yeah.
Ray wrote that speech.
Well, he was sitting next to me and watching me lip sync it as he was saying it. I was saying, we were freaking out. I was pinching myself. Especially the part about the baby cows. Like he was very sly at the beginning and saying all the everybody's issues are related. but he made it very clear which one is the one he was talking about. Talking about taking baby cows away from their mothers.
Is Shiloh still here?
No, she took off maybe half an hour ago or so.
Okay.
And she had mentioned that she's babysitting right now.
Yeah, I just wanted to see how she felt about hearing us talk. I was really glad she was so vulnerable. And somebody last night was also vulnerable because she was saying how she's like allergic to religion, even though she's joining this interfaith vegan coalition meeting. And then when we all went around and shared our spiritual experiences, and we're all into our spirituality, and she said, "Oh no, I hope I didn't offend everybody." And we all reassured her, no, we understand this feeling of being allergic to religious practices where people are really rigid and hypocritical and judgmental. That's not what Jesus or definitely Jesus. Muhammad, he got kind of materialistic in the beginning. He was nonviolent, then he got pretty greedy and materialistic. Not sure what happened to him. I've always liked Buddha. But anyway, I do know that absolutely that Jesus came to teach nonviolence, and the early Christians taught that. And there's so much proof that Jesus was a vegan, and and the early Christians were. And so I just wanted to bring that up, just to come back to that idea of, I guess I was vulnerable when I said I wasn't sure if this was a safe space, but I just keep on, and I get triggered sometimes. So I'm glad Shiloh felt comfortable with sharing. And also, I'm a pretty strong person, and I can withstand, I can deal with my feelings. I can look within, and I can check in with people. I can do all kinds of things to take care of myself. But a lot of people, they're really scared. They've been hurt, or they're just always been feeling anxious around groups. So that's part of what I want to talk about in this creating healthy community is how to include those people who aren't as extroverted, I guess you could say, aren't as articulate, aren't as comfortable speaking in groups, and to draw them out, empower them, to encourage them to use their talents. So I'm glad we got this. I'm really glad I got on this so that I could figure out what I want this conversation that I hope to facilitate about. Does anybody have any thoughts about that?
I think we definitely need a strong feminine presence, that maybe, I guess it's not that we haven't had it, but we could prioritize it more, and we could definitely make a space for that. And I mean, if you want to get, scientific about it, there's been studies done on collective intelligence that suggest that the number of women is directly correlated to a group's ability to effectively communicate and problem solve. And I think that has a lot to do with what you're talking about, providing this inclusive, safe space that is not so intellectual and heady, and you get lost when somebody uses this word, or they're just like rapid fire. We need both ends of the spectrum represented. Absolutely.
Well, that fits right into what I was saying about zeitgeist, because part of what we see today is filling the rest of that human identity with the feminine. We talked about we need a war effort like response to this. Think of World War I, World War II, the decision-making process going into world wars, where we're going to take all our young sons and put them into the war machine. That was absolutely a male decision from beginning to end, right? And that is we don't really want a World War III. We wanted a World War I. They were so anxious to go to war. Everybody was so thrilled with this idea of going to war until they were sitting in the mud and getting gangrene for a couple of years. That kind of cooled their jets a bit. But it's exciting to see it. And I feel like it's a feminist philosophy, and I don't want to claim too much as a feminist, because I think there's a lot of learning that I need to do about feminism, but recognizing this arrival of the feminine voice empowers women, but it also empowers men to embrace their feminine side and start to, unlock some things that were unmanly and you wouldn't see in politics, you wouldn't see in corporate leadership. There was just this cutthroat male attitude that we have to be cutthroat. We have to be tough. We have to be, decisive and unforgiving and have no compassion, right? It's all related to this attitude of resources or something that we crush up and turn into money. So we see this worldwide shift. And the United Nations themselves recognize that educating girls and educating women and empowering young girls is the number one solution to end poverty. It's that powerful. It's, the shift of mentality from, where so many cultures rejoice when they have a boy because they believe that they'll have the next head of the family. Now women can be the head of the family. I've often said that when our family went vegan, it was my wife taking a leadership role in the ethical nature of our family, the ethical leadership of our family. And that's something that doesn't have to necessarily be a woman. It just culturally makes sense that this is a big part of the shift of the movement. We got so many people in the environmental movement that are women, not reflected in the percentage of leadership, which obviously has to change. But the animal rights movement is 80% women. So when I look at the drawdown solutions, one of the highest solutions that they've got for drawdown, apparently to actually draw carbon from the atmosphere, is educating girls and empowering women as a solution. So, I mean, part of that, and I know the woman that wrote the Drawdown book, she is given a TED Talk where she talks about that doesn't just apply to micro enterprises overseas in developing nations where most women are farmers. That applies to the movement in developed nations as well, that women are taking a leadership role, and it has an impact across the board. And that affects our ability to embrace climate change solutions.
Powerful stuff. I want to welcome
Christopher.
Christopher. Welcome, Christopher. How you doing?
Thank you. Hey, how's it going, guys?
Really well. Thank you.
Excellent. I heard you mention earlier you're looking for some digital flyers for the block party on Friday. I actually made some up yesterday and gave them to Myra, but I'll send you some. Look for your Facebook Messenger and you'll get 2 copies of those.
Oh, dude, thank you. Thank you, Christopher.
Yeah, no problem. My pleasure.
Wow. Awesome. Collective intelligence in action.
There you go. Yeah, it was real easy for me to make them. Just took about 20 minutes, so no worries.
Thank you. Thank you. Super cool. All right, well, let's look on the Facebook page here. And see what we got. Digital flyers. Okay, so Mayra posted, it's the one with the heart, Madre Tierra, the Spanish one?
Yeah, there should be a version in English as well. I think I sent them directly to your messenger.
Okay.
Maybe I can share them here on the Zoom as well, though. Let me see.
Sure. Okay, and what do I do there, Nolan, to like download this or whatever? Or how do I post that?
Well, you can download there.
Download, okay.
And share.
Share to Facebook. Yeah, let's share. All right, looks like we've got both versions now posted, English and Spanish. Beautiful, Christopher.
Cool. Yeah. No, and if you need something extra or some other style, I can do those as well. No problem. Got a lot of free time right now, so
Awesome.
just let me know. Yeah.
Thank you, Christopher. Super cool.
Yeah. No worries.
All right, Ray, both of those are on my Facebook page, so we can share them around. I'm not really much of a Facebook user, but I'm kind of starting to learn as we go.
It's actually really cool. I've actually posted those on several Save the Earth groups and ecologist groups and things like that on Facebook groups that have like in excess of 3,000 members. So just trying to get the word out and see who's interested and who can head over to radish.org and your block party link there on Friday. And you never know, you might get some interesting people to show up.
Yeah, well, we're getting lots of traction in terms of the video, lots of likes, lots of comments, and some new folks have joined Radish based on what they're seeing just on that one video. Because it's Guy McPherson, updating his position, his view. This is my girlfriend calling. Got to take this. I'll be right back. Excuse me.
No worries.
Be careful saying you got lots of time on your hands and mad graphic skills, Christopher.
Yeah, I know. All of a sudden, all these requests will come out of nowhere, and then next thing you know, I'm stuck making flyers or all kinds of invitations. But yeah, I mean, whatever I can do, I'll do. If there's obviously pressing needs at home and other things to do, but I'm kind of lucky. I work 6 months out of the year, and then the other 6 months out of the year, I have free time.
Wow.
Yeah.
I grew up with two school teachers as parents, and I thought 2 months off a year was something special.
That is pretty peachy as well. Yeah, you just gotta figure a way to do things. But to just introduce myself to you, Ray, I live in Baja, California. Nice to meet you, and I'm very interested in helping out collective intelligence and promoting good, positive ideas on many fronts. My specialties are obviously homesteading and living off the grid in a healthy and sustainable way. And also I have a lot of experience as a community organizer. I worked for several years organizing low income and socially difficult areas and situations for this group called Acorn before they shut down. It's the Association for Community Organizations for Reform Now, and worked with them in downtown Los Angeles and San Diego, Southern California. We also did several trips out to New Orleans right after the hurricane there. So we helped out doing a lot of social justice issues, things like that. So I've got some experience knocking on doors and promoting different causes, things like that. So this is just another great cause too, to kind of help out, and whether it be to find solutions to the climate problem. We're just organizing and helping people with better ways of living, in general. I'm all for it.
Beautiful. Well, the two go hand in hand, because what we urgently need is a holistic redesign and holistic transformation of essentially every aspect of human life on the planet, right? Including, like I was talking about earlier, both kind of the indirect effects of our activities on the planet. So we need to transform our activities so that we have far fewer unintended negative impacts and far more intended positive impacts, as well as projects which have nothing to do with our direct living arrangements like transportation or food or housing or anything, but are humanity directly modifying the temperature of the planet, like through SRM, cooling the planet intentionally. But anyway, all of this is under one giant umbrella called humanity. Everything must transform, right? Everything must transform.
Yeah.
Our culture, our diet, our living arrangements, everything, our politics, our economics, our very mode of production of the global economy. Right now, we have what I call an economy of hoarding. Endless accumulation of life-giving resources. Right.
There's a billboard on my street that I drive by, and it's a series, so I see them all over the place. There's this furniture store in Toronto. I'm in Toronto, Canada. And the slogan is, "I am many things." And it's a picture of a person, and they'll have some sort of piece of furniture, like a lamp or a end table or something, and a picture that's partially covering them. But this slogan, "I am many things," meaning I am not just a person. I'm all the things that I belong to. And if I don't have enough stuff, or if my stuff isn't cool, then I'm not cool. There's this message. It's blatant on a billboard on the side of the road, on top of buildings and so forth. I'm like, is anybody else seeing this? I feel like in John Carpenter's They Live, where you put on the glasses and you have these subliminal messages. It isn't even subliminal. It's right there. It's saying that you're crap until you buy crap.
You are what you consume. No, you're very right, Ray. It's
Buy stuff that'll fill that hole in that void that where you don't have a personality, apparently.
No, yeah, it's exactly it. I mean, a lot of people noticed this several years ago, maybe 20, 30 years ago. I read a book by a Latvian named Kali Lasny, and it's called Culture Jam. This was back in my idealist years, like when I was 19, 20 years old. And it made a huge impression on me. But it did tell you that, how we're controlled by the television, we're controlled by advertising, by movies, by everything that seems cool. And we're sold this image, we're sold this idea that the products and the materials that we possess, or the outside experience, everything that's on the outside is going to make us happy, when actually it's inside of us. Each of us inside of us has everything we need to make us happy. We've just been perversed into believing this different way of experiencing happiness. But it's a long trip for a lot of people. They have to experience different things in life to get to that inflection point where they realize that, what I purchase, what are the things I buy, if I'm keeping up with the Joneses, all those things aren't making them happy at the end of the day. And when they search inward, inside, they start to unlock the reality and the truth of what our experience here is. But it's a personal journey for every single individual, every single human being. And it's great that we have this collective intelligence that Jamin's starting to kind of empower these groups of people like us who think very much the same way, that we have to radically change all of these human habits of ours, whether it be driving every day to work or consuming meat. I think the vegan bullet point, that's a huge one that's going to make a huge dent in all of these problems with Mother Earth, turning into vegans and helping, create more of a vegetable-based diet around the world, because we can all live that way. And there's certain other bullet points as well which Jamin touches on. And if we don't willingly do this, then we're going to be forced to do this because Mother Earth is adapting to the amount of pollution and crap and things that we're doing around the world. And time will never stop. You know, it's just humanity's, our instance here on this planet is going to get more difficult and get more complicated if we don't change our way of doing things. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that it occurs to me that might be part of what the shift is, that people, you know, resist that idea of identifying themselves as an environmentalist or as a vegan, because so many of us just go through life with no identity. I'm just a person. I'm just, you know, you want me to be an environmentalist? And it's not hard to do. It's just a shift of mentality, but it feels like they're getting a new job or something. It's you know, it's too much expectation that they'll now have to monitor what they actually consume. And part of it may be exacerbated by this idea that you're empty until you fill yourself full of stuff. Because you see people that love to shop, they love to be a consumer. So that part of their identity they've got no problem with, but having an identity where you don't shop is a little bit a harder sell. You mentioned culture jams. Jamin and I shared a link to that book, Activism! by Tim Jordan. He's got a chapter on culture jams, and he has a chapter on raves as a form of activism. So you're doing the 24-hour party.
Totally.
You won't have to hide from the cops though, so you got that working for you.
I don't know, you know, as radical as we're being, I have received death threats from criminal drug cartels, but that relates to work that I was doing with former Mexican President Vicente Fox on the legalization and regulation of cannabis as a first step to ending prohibition. It's prohibition that created the criminal drug cartels. So anyway, we got totally radical with that, and then I got some radical death threats. And I had to, just the fact that it's virtual doesn't mean that we're without threats.
Was it a week ago that we were talking to Miles about his comfort zone with activism, that he was feeling that activism was putting your neck on the line, and he wasn't comfortable with that. So he decided to change his tactics to, I don't know, letter writing to, he's in Canada, so letter writing to the royal family seemed a lot safer. But
Canadian. Anyway, no, I'm just kidding. Anyway, we Miles actually wrote a comment to the 12-minute video with Guy McPherson and Yates saying he will be there at the block party. So go Canada. And with Canada, Mexico, and the United States, we've got the first NAFTA powered. We've got the NAFTA powered Solution Club now, thanks to Christopher in Mexico,
Western Horizon,
Ray up in Canada.
Definitely, we're all interested. I'm curious to when Dr. Tao starts speaking on Friday from Harvard, and you know, his amazing idea about the solar radiation being reflected by these mirrors, and you know, if you guys have started thinking about getting my pioneers of industry and like those large companies that are materials based, like 3M, and I can think of a few others, but if they've been briefed on this, or if they have any ideas from you guys, maybe sending them over just basic plans and things like that, if they're on board with those kinds of, because you need to mass produce these at the scale that, you know, to get this changed. If we keep understanding what Guy McPherson is saying, that this imminent, you know, runaway climate change is around the corner, and we keep seeing articles about the North Bering Sea and more methane release and bubbling And at the levels that it is going, we may have, as he says, 2025 will be the year. So I was curious how pressing these things are, and how much you guys are getting all those maybe pioneers of industry involved.
Yeah, really great questions, Christopher. We haven't reached out, or I haven't reached out to the, basically the big glass conglomerates, which would be the kind of the sort of the obvious candidates to mass produce these floating mirrors, Owens Corning, 3M, Vitro of Mexico, for example. So, but I would love to do that and reach out to them and say, look, we don't have, the hundreds of billions of dollars of budget at the moment to fund this, but if you want to be a pioneer and create a design for this that we can then submit in our proposals to government, hey, you might be at the front of the line. So be proactive,
Right.
invest some resource up front. And then when the governments wake up, because the exponential overheating, see, the way I see this is the exponential overheating is going to continue until we reach a
All
breaking
baked in.
point, which we may be at right now, hopefully, right? And then at that moment, which could be very, very soon, especially now that we're really kicking off collective intelligence in a big way and bringing all these conversations to the forefront, governments might react very quickly, World War II style, right? How long did it take for the Allies to get together and put together a plan? How long did it take for the Empire of Japan to, put together their plans for conquering Asia? How long did it take for the Germans to put together their plans? These things can turn very quickly.
Very quickly.
How long did it take for the Soviets? Yeah. And so, the first glass conglomerate to come up with a viable prototype and a viable plan and proposal, when we urgently need those mirrors, I can totally see the governments of the world saying, okay, who's ready to do this? Vitro,
who's first in line?
Monterrey, Mexico, you ready to start cranking this out? Go, here's your contract, cost plus, go, 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 go.
Right.
Right.
Canadian here, it actually took you 4 years to get into World War One.
It's definitely a first mover advantage opportunity to some of the glass conglomerates of the world making their own prototypes. Heck yes.
Wow, what happened there?
Oh, you mean internet wise?
You started talking slower, then started talking really fast.
Yeah. That's now we've got an imperfect internet connection.
Okay,
here.
I thought it was me.
It usually is you, Ray.
I was asking you. I was saying that how long does it take you to get into World War One, into the World Wars? It took the States 3 years to get into a 4-year war, and it took you till from 39 to 41 to get into World War II. The good old days of isolationism.
Well, it's taken us decades to get into the current, war with overheating. So I'd say we're overdue, long overdue, in fact. But it's going to be collective intelligence that's going to really help accelerate this because, see, when I talk about collective intelligence coming up with solutions, just bear with me for a moment, but consider kind of two sets of solutions. There's the nuts and bolts engineering solutions. We need so many glass mirrors in these oceans, in these configurations, et cetera, et cetera. So that's an engineering solution. But right now it's just an engineering solution on paper. What we also need are the political solutions to get those funded. We need the cultural and media and PR solutions so that the communities, the populations of these countries can put pressure on their governments to then say yes to these political solutions, like laws, dedicating funding and resources to this, et cetera, et cetera. So we need the full spectrum of solutions, all the way to the solution of creating a new story for humanity. Who are we? Why are we here? How did we get here? Where are we going? what's our mission, right? I kind of feel like the baby wildebeest who's born somewhere in the middle of the Serengeti in some big pack. And, you know, same day as I'm born, I'm up galloping. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know why, but I'm just kind of, you know, looking to my left, to my right, ahead, behind, and just keeping up with the herd. And that's what we humans have been doing. Pardon me?
Behind is the jackals waiting for you to fall behind the herd.
Exactly.
The time frame is very pressing.
And with the analogy, the metaphor to humans, we've got plenty of jackals behind us. There are plenty of
Big problem.
you know, punishments for those who don't keep up with the herd and get an education and start making money and hoarding and you know, amassing, et cetera, et cetera.
If I could chime in, I think what you're doing, Jamin, is actually just being able to coalesce and bring people together. The fact that you have a Harvard scientist who is, you know, has a brainchild and his ideas are really amazing, on the vanguard of how to resolve this overheating of the planet. Like you said, you're creating these layers, and when we will need access to a very fast plan to solve issues, you know, I don't know what it's going to take. If it's the Thwaites Glacier right now that's in Antarctica, you know, it's boiling underneath the waters there. And right now they had a record high of 65 degrees Fahrenheit. So they know that that's going to break off. And eventually, if that breaks off, it's 3 feet of global sea rise, you know, and that means Miami's going to be underwater. That means the Netherlands is going to have problems. So when we get to that point, you know, and governments are going to have to act, we might as well have these contention plans already in place. And the more work you do right now ahead of time, we don't know what the time frame is. You know, certain scientists say maybe 5 years down the line, maybe we'll have 15, maybe 25 years. The IPCC has all these predictions and plans. But if you don't have a backup plan, if you don't have these contention plans and these layers that you're creating right now, we don't want to be scrambling. We don't want to have to locate all this information or locate these ideas, locate these things last minute when all the pressure's on. So the more work you do up front, the more it's going to make sense, and the better plans that you can provide to, you know, large corporations or large, you know, the governments, and have this ahead of time. Maybe they're already working on certain things as well. Maybe they have more information than we do. But as concerned, responsible citizens, it would belittle us to not do this, you know, and to not at least give our 2 cents and try it the best we can. So I just commend you on that, and just whatever plans you have, I'll talk to whatever people I know here in Mexico. I can speak good Spanish. If I need to get in touch with other people just like you, we'll shake and rattle and roll and try and get people to go for, you know, street demonstrations if they have to, get in touch with different people that know how to do things and make it happen.
What's the corresponding equivalent of collective intelligence? You've got a collective intelligence and collective agreement. How do you get people on the same page? Like, because you can gather all the intelligence and people can know things, but they need to have collective wisdom as well. Wisdom that this is necessary to do. And we talked about how solar radiation management requires a belief in climate change that a lot of industry is resisting. But once they recognize that this takes the pressure off of them, and we're largely getting past that point where industry acknowledges anthropogenic climate change. So the time is ripe for us to be able to actually have agreement that everybody, including the fossil fuel industry, including the, you know, animal agriculture industry, should be looking to this as a solution, because it takes pressure off of them. So we should be able to get some sort of a consensus. Is consensus the word, or is that too total?
Well, here's the thing. You guys may know the expression that, you know, big fish only thrive in murky waters. And right now, the big corporations and big individual interests that are destroying life on Earth have been able to thrive and even convince whole swaths of the human population that, you know, what they're doing is totally fine and there's no problem, et cetera, et cetera. Look at the meat industry, look at the oil and gas industry, et cetera, construction industry, the list goes on and on. With collective intelligence, we're removing the murkiness, and we're going to shine the bright lights and expose what's going on. Take that 12-minute video that I did with Guy McPherson and Ye Tao, right? It very concisely shines a big bright light on the urgency for SRM, what SRM is, how it can work, et cetera, et cetera. So part of the solutions that we need, remember I went back to those, like there's nuts and bolts engineering solutions, and then there's all these kind of softer social solutions, media solutions, memes, social media solutions, et cetera, that get the word out and get the truth out, right? I mean, we are probably a dozen viral 1 to 3 minute videos away from re-educating all of humanity. Like really powerful, entertaining, fun, clear, hard-hitting videos that literally our own community could probably put together. But as the community gets bigger, see, now we got Christopher on board, who's good with digital graphics and this and that. This is collective intelligence. This is how it works. We come together and we come up with all these solutions. And
Well, I mentioned the oil industry. What about the media industry that is largely bought and sold by the interest of the people?
Well, we'll see, the cool thing is this. We've had over the last 20 years the growth of social media, but even social media is corporatized. Look at Facebook, look at Twitter, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, what we're creating here is this open source, non-financial, decentralized, radical collective intelligence that cannot be bought out, is going to be essentially impossible to, and it will also be by far the most fun and nurturing thing. Just look at how we are all enriched by being in this radically transformational conversation with each other, transcending boundaries, right? Really finding our micro tribe. My tribe is in Canada, Mexico, Arkansas, right? Seattle, Whidbey Island, all over the place. We're custom rolling our own unique tribes. And once this thing really takes off and you have a million little micro niches, you know, we're each going to be able to populate all those micro niches where we can have the most impact. Hey, Christopher, thanks so much for all that digital work. They really need you over here where they're creating, we're all going to be reconfiguring ourselves, constantly going to those bottlenecks in the network of transformation and unbottlenecking, unblocking.
And what you mentioned, Damon, about each of us having our own
information to flow, getting the people to flow, the ideas, the conversations. This is the new game. Welcome to the future. This is radical collective intelligence. And this is what the world.
Yes, so what you mentioned, Jamin, about, you know, each of us collectively searching out for our identities and finding tribes and finding things that resonate with each of us. Once you find different avenues and how to access that, like Ray was asking about, you know, how do you bring that collective intelligence and make it a collective wisdom where people start enacting the intelligence that we find, right? And it all becomes, you have to use the same tools, the marketing, you have to strategize, and you have to, you know, get out the word to a large amount of people. It looks like Jamin went off and he lost his connection, but to your point, Ray, I was thinking about that question, and you know, it makes sense, because how do you pierce through the mainstream media? How do you pierce through, you know, the regular drummed down, the era of Trump and all the stuff that we get? They're anti-science. The EPL right now is breaking up all the Clean Water Acts and things like that. And it is really just depending on an individual connection with people, creating small groups like this, and little by little, these small groups will create more power than you turning on the TV and paying attention to CNN. This is where you'll go for your your energy and your motivation to do things the right way. But it is true that nowadays with technology, we have access to much more, power to affect each other's lives. And I think it's just really organizing these ways and creating marketing strategies for, healthier ways of living, showing data and showing science, even though today some of that's not as popular, but it will be, because you can't fight it. Eventually, as much as we try and say no to science and the data, it's going to be at our front window, the amount of heat and the amount of things. So there's no denying it at the end. We just can't turn a blind eye to it. And we have to organize like we're doing now, thanks to Jamin's ideas. Go ahead, Patricia.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I just really want to welcome you, Christopher. And have you been on these social clubs before?
Yes, I have been a part of one other with Jamin. And in the past, I've also, organized myself with different groups of people for social justice issues, whether it be low-income housing or animal rights. I used to work at the San Diego Zoo, and I used to make a lot of members to support animals that are going in extinction. So a lot of these kind of social endeavors have been a huge part of my life, and giving back, obviously. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, I did hear you talk about Acorn and everything. I've been listening the whole time, not always
Cool.
on video. Just, I've been on this since, how long have we all been here? Like 3 or 4 hours. So I went and made my lunch. But I was just gonna say, yeah, it's amazing that, Christopher, you could just jump in, say you want to make a flyer, you're helping, you're spreading the word, and you're feeling so comfortable with us. And so I hope you feel welcomed, and I'm really enjoying hearing you talk and share. And I also was thinking the small groups, the compassionate living circles that I'm helping to organize under, really it started because Thomas Wade Jackson, who showed A Prayer for Compassion, who produced and directed that movie. Have you seen that, Christopher? A Prayer for Compassion?
Have not, no. I'll have to check that out.
It's different spiritual leaders sharing why veganism is important in their spiritual path. And so he envisioned that there would be these compassionate living circles in churches that would help, and faith communities of all sorts, that would encourage people to adopt veganism as well as extend compassion to all the areas of life. And even now, the poor, the neighborhood, I'm starting to envision something I had envisioned a long time ago, was that faith communities can be community centers, because they're not used very much. And if they could be used at a community, and teach these compassionate living circle community facilitators to come and help create. So we need to be in touch, because about that local grassroots organizing. So that is a question I have, is how do we stay in touch with these people? Like, how do I stay in touch with Shiloh and tell her, hey, I really enjoyed what you said? How do I connect with Christopher? So, when this thing comes up on, when the 24-hour block party, what suggestions you have? But before I get the answer to that question, I just want to sing a little song. To dream and sing with me if you like, the impossible dream, to fight the unbeatable foe. I can't remember the rest of the words. To dream the impossible dream.
Awesome.
I'm gonna get words to all the songs, so when I feel inspired to sing, I'll have them.
Just spelled out the words. I feel the emotion. That was awesome. And I was thinking, yeah, you can for the Friday block party, I mean, people leave comments. People they can make a mailing list, maybe leave their emails, things like that. You can direct them to the radish.org membership. There's different ways to keep in touch. Like, as you mentioned, like with me, I'll look up your name, Patricia Mickelson, and maybe you'll be on Facebook, and then I'll send you a Facebook messenger little thing, and then we can keep in contact, over ideas and plans, and what are you doing in your area to do this, and I just promoting different things, because we're all people of the same ilk. We have that idea, that fiber to create a change that's more positive, to see a life here on Earth that is a more holistic, a healthier way of living, with Mother Earth more included, because we know we're losing part of our souls. It's all about our soul, because we have to continue on, and as Mother Earth is our home, we have to do a better job. So, but we have to reconnect, and we have to know each other. And as you said, like, we can exchange information, and little by little, we'll create that community. This is an online community. It's not like a church community where you go to a local church every Sunday and know everybody, but it's similar. It's certain people that you correspond with and that you really have a deep feeling for, and that you're willing to spend time and make an effort to create something that's gonna endure and create a better future, not for just ourselves, but for our children and everyone else. So we should do that.
Okay, and you can look up
Exchange
Patricia
emails.
Trish. I go by Patricia Trish Mickelson.
Okay,
Great. And what's your
will
last
do.
name?
It's Doreau. It's French. It's spelled Doreau.
Okay. My son's name is Christopher.
Right on.
Your name. Thanks.
That'll be easy to remember.
Yeah.
And this is what I'm talking about. This is the connective tissue
Yeah. I
between
know.
our neurons, our craniums, our
I
heart.
mean, and we can all like instead of listening to I like to listen to educational things while I'm doing my endless amount of work around my apartment. Even though I have a bunch of stuff to sort, and I don't know. Even though I'm just by myself here, I make a big mess. So if I can clean up and do things while I'm listening, and instead of listening to it, like I think it was Christopher who was saying, instead of listening to podcasts or whoever said that, YouTube, something that's kind of stale in a way and non-interactive. So this is perfect. And I look forward to the time when this channel is going to be going on 24 hours a day. And so anytime we can jump in and listen all day. And I do envision that the community centers will be in-person places, that faith communities will be open 24 hours to the neighborhoods, and there'll be always people there to listen and to talk about, somebody comes in after they're hungover at the bar, they can come in and they won't go to the bar anymore because they'll just want to come to this active place, and they'll be contra dancing and singing and aerobic exercises. And laughter yoga. Ho, 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 ha, ha, hee. Whee! And we'll also do somersaults, cartwheels, and backflips. Yep. I'm going to do that right now. Phew, phew, phew.
It's infectious. Your energy is infectious. And that's what we do. We motivate each other, And with the time we have left on this planet, we better do something good. And it's awesome. I think it's amazing that we're having these conversations, these discussions, and we're collaborating, because there's a huge thirst. People want to do something. People feel like they have something to provide. They have something to give. This group is still small. It's still starting. It's still just beginning. And there's a few people who are willing to participate. But I can envision this getting hundreds of people wanting to connect, and hundreds of people wanting to talk, and then later on having to make several different meetings just to fit in all the dialogue and all the talk. But as Ray was mentioning too, we have to start strategizing And these big themes, these big ideas that we can all talk about spiritually and get deep into, we have to start making bullet points. We have to start organizing, and little by little making a headway and organizing all this energy and all this need, these changes, and then seeing these projects through. It's very important once you're responsible to yourself and responsible to Mother Earth, to see things through, not to just be a weekend warrior, as some people say, but see the project all the way through.
Amen.
Yeah, that did ability to see oneself as a contributor, as participating. Like I said, most people don't see themselves as environmentalists. All it takes is a mental shift, and that mental shift is what determines whether we manage to rescue this situation or not. Because
Well,
I mean, there's so many people that convince there's some sort of, the government will protect us. That's what they're there for, aren't they? The reflection of ourselves. They do whatever we're voting them to do, and right now we're voting them to grow an infinite economy in a finite planet. So.
Oh,
Exactly.
Ray, do you think you could smile more so I could see your dimple?
Put the light right up there. It makes it pop.
I have only one dimple too. That's something we haven't. We need to find these common things because they're important. And don't forget, Christopher, I don't know if you know, but you can, I believe it's you can have up to 100 breakout rooms
Wow.
on Zoom. So I think we're going to figure out how to have, is anybody familiar with open space technology?
Yeah.
So it's a time when everybody can just, I can imagine us facilitated open space technology. Have you gone to meetings, Christopher, or facilitated those groups?
Yeah, I have. I participated for a while in open space programming and adding, code to different programs and things like that.
Well, actually, open space technology is more of an in-person thing where people get in a circle and they have a question, which is really neat because that's what VW26 is all about, asking questions. And like the question would be, how can we get SRM into, like your question was, how can we get big corporations to adopt this early? Or no, actually the overall question is, how can we make this world a better place? And so somebody might say, I want to talk about SRM and how to do this, and I would say, I want to talk about community, and I am in an off-grid community. I mean, I want to build an off-grid community and already have that. I want to talk to you about that too. So somebody else might say, I want to figure out I want to have a discussion about animal agriculture. And so all these things would be put up somehow on a board, because I've never seen this done virtually, but all the topics would be put up, and then people would decide where they would go, and then the facilitator can put people into those groups. You like that? All right. And one of the laws of open space technology is the law of motion. Like if you don't want to if you're like, oh, I'm not sure if this is where I want to be in this group, I can go somewhere else. And so somehow they can, I think, chat with the facilitator and say, put me in that other group. And so I just laid out my dream that I've always wanted to do. And with you guys with technology, you maybe can figure out how to make that bulletin board, and we're going to be expert. Okay, I'm telling you guys, whoever can learn how to use these breakout rooms is going to have the most power.
Totally.
I'm joking.
No, it's no joke. It's no joke. And really, here's how I see it. Here's how I frame it. It's not just a mental shift, because the software, the systems, and it's not just hard-coded software, it's also the softer forms of software, like the culture with which we come together, okay? All of this constitutes the platform, right? The software, the culture, the community, the policies, rules, regulations, everything. And what we're really talking about, drum roll, we're talking about creating a new operating system for humanity. Which really means a new operating system for Mother Earth. We've got a great motherboard, but we've got shitty software, right? We were downloaded with all this software from birth and it was beaten into us. You have to hoard information. You have to have something that other people need so you can sell it to them, right? And you need to make money and hoard as much money and land and resources and cattle. You're all no cattle, right? You know, we've had this pounded into us. We've had bad software, malware. It should be called sociopathware or something like that. You know, downloaded into us, beaten into us from when we were kids. And now we're just like a bunch of robots running around with bad software controlling us, right? With this new operating system, it comes complete with anti-malware. So if somebody says something stupid, the antidote to that will just bubble right to it, right? We used to have these liquid Drano ads. You got a clog? And it would show the liquid Drano going right to the clog, right? With collective intelligence, we're gonna have the right ideas, conversations, and people go right to wherever the malware starts to creep in. Some sociopath tries to sell people on some new form of beef jerky or something like that that tastes better. No. We surround that with correct information and just destroy that product before it even hits the shelves.
And as you mentioned, everything is transparent, everything is recorded. So it's everything, the truth eventually bubbles up to the top, you know. It's unfortunate what's happening right now with social platforms like Facebook, where they're allowing all types of political rhetoric, even if it's lies, to be you know, disseminated without any controls and things like that. But I think humanity and individuals are discerning things, and they're able to weed through this jungle of crap that unfortunately we have. And I mean, we're all each learning our own life lessons here on this planet Earth, on this school. I like to call it the Earth School. But this is a great tool, Jamin, for those people who really want to make a change in their local communities, and that change starts to grow. You know, I'm thinking of, you get, you know, sheep herders, people in Australia who are farmers. There's some people in South Africa, and they have great ideas on how to manage land to holistically bring it back together to a better ecological state. And when you have these kinds of open channels, and you have, you know, a farmer who doesn't know what to do and has questions, you can log on and have the best information from some of the greatest sources. You know, the TED Talks, those people who are pioneers of advanced thinking and things like that, I'm sure they'd be very interested in recording videos and making these platforms available for these people to reach out and have these resources. So like you mentioned, Patricia, it's a great ideas to have these channels open and have these multiple rooms. But we just have to organize it. We just have to get more people invested and involved, interested, and let the ball roll, because all the tools are out there for it.
You mentioned farmers. I'm not necessarily certain whether they're a culture that's up to speed on collective intelligence. Where the conversation you got to get involved with is the Farm Bill, and this is kind of the crux of where the only way to get their attention is to convince them that this Farm Bill is not sustainable, that it itself is a set of promises that no matter what you grow, you're going to be taken care of forever because you're farmers and we love farmers, and therefore we'll always have more money to put aside, even if the demand for your product has disappeared. we'll figure out a way to sell it overseas. You know, it's a global problem. We need a global solution. So the market has to disappear overseas as well. Maybe even it's more of our obligation to set a better example for developing nations. But to convince farmers that the Farm Bill isn't going to support them forever, that's a hard sell. It's and trying to get people to understand that when they're being lied to, because any administration will lie to get the votes of the rural communities. They're in lockstep with this kind of thinking. So it's really hard to get them to think outside of what the government prescribes for them.
You know, Ray, if you don't mind me just kind of like jumping in, like I personally feel that farmers and people in rural communities may actually be quicker to understand and adopt collective intelligence into their lives, because they haven't gone so far off the path into the weird like sociopathic dystopia that is most metropolitan like cities, and this weird culture of not talking to people that you meet in public, and where you're always being told what to do by someone else, and it's like we live in that like a top-down chain world. And I think that people who come from rural communities and farmers especially, they're used to the idea of people joining together to raise a barn or coming together to talk about a town issue. And I think of the rural communities in Africa that come together underneath their big trees, and they're these rural people, but they're coming together and they're talking about climate change, and they're talking about how is it that we as a small community, almost entirely cut off from the grid, can make a difference. Like how can we limit our impact, whether it be swapping out kerosene lamps for solar panels. Yeah, and I don't know. I actually think that it's more hopeful than that. I think that farmers and stuff would be liberated to be able to talk with people and have conversation rather than have this kind of too good to be true sales pitch from politicians. That's just the way I see it.
I've had that conversation. I was presenting at a Cowspiracy screening, and there was 6 farmers that attended to contest. They wanted to challenge the notion that that we should be calculating our impact nationally rather than globally. You're using global statistics, but we're actually very efficient, and the percentage of emissions attributed to Canadian farmers is much smaller. So it's this percentage game. So obviously, climate change is a global problem. Canada doesn't have its own climate, and you play this percentage game, and all of a sudden, it's places with bad agricultural practices, like in Kenya. It's those Kenyans that are eating all the beef. No, it's the United States. It's developed nations that are contributing this footprint. So you get all these games, but these at least one of them was a very well-spoken person. He stood up and he said, if the world wants to eat plants, I'm going to grow plants. I'm a businessman. I'm going to switch no matter what. I just want the truth to be told, and I think we should make all the decisions based on truth. And surprise, surprise, at a Cowspiracy screening, the farmer gets the standing ovation. But I think what people were so excited to hear was rational thought. I've also experienced my coworkers in North Carolina. I was working from Toronto, for a company in North Carolina that went to a protest, and it was, I can't remember, it was 300, 800 pig farmers that were protesting, and they had signs like Farmers Feed Cities, which I think people kind of understand that concept. That we're not really conveying as much information other than they think that we don't understand that, and that they've got a really strong argument that their road is righteous because they feed cities. I'm counting on farmers to continue to feed me. But there's every workforce is in a sense a living entity that defends itself. And I don't see the conversations that you're talking about in the pig farming industry. I think they're very scared, and that comes out as fear and rage. There was signs in that group that said, we can feed people, but we can't feed stupid. We can fix hunger, we can't fix stupid, or something like that. You know, there's a sense of righteousness that really our culture supports. We are convinced that farming is a benign activity. I go on Google Earth and have a look at Michigan, and I see agriculture. I could see where the tree line ends. I could see this industry from, a view from space. It's not a small industry. It's not a benign industry, and everybody pretends that it is. I think I'm getting an echo. So there are a lot of intelligent people out there, and a lot of them are still a lot of intelligent people that should be plant-based farmers that recognize that they are future-proof, but they're still in lockstep with the farmers in general. And I mean, vegan activism maybe even makes it worse. You assume that there's farmers versus PETA. Are these the two sides? And if they are the two sides, then the public's going to go with the farmers. And we'll have a farm bill. The Trans-Pacific Partnership guaranteed the income of farmers no matter what their crop was, no matter what the market was, no matter how much the products, the crop failed. And it's just like this sense that industry is right no matter what, which, I mean, that's a nanny state. That's, what the political right don't want any rules in our society that tells us how to live our lives, but we're being told how to spend our money. All that we have to support these industries that aren't able to survive on the free market. So which is it? Is it a left solution or right solution? Awful lot of nanny state going around.
That's all part of the malware that we've been downloaded with. Hey, I just want to make a quick comment. Nolan and I are going to need to have a little huddle and do some work before the 3 o'clock meeting, which starts in 34 minutes, which everyone is invited to. Christopher, Patricia, if you give me a thumbs up if you want to be on that mailing list for the vegan, thumbs down if you don't. Hey, just to put you on the mailing list, you have no obligation. Okay, great. So I'll send you guys the link to that in a little bit here. And anyway,
that's
in
the
33
VCI
minutes.
meeting. That's the
Pardon me?
VCI. VCI.
Yeah, that's right. Vegan World 2026 Collective Intelligence. So it's collective intelligence applied to veganism, basically.
Yeah, I wanted to be on that call today. So sounds
Okay,
like
great.
we're gonna.
Okay, I'll add you both to the mailing list for that. And anyway, but you guys carry on. You don't need to stop. I'm just letting you know that Nolan and I are going to have to pause for a little huddle here ourselves. But anyway, carry on.
Question.
I'm gonna
Before
take
you
a
go,
little break.
I described the zombie apocalypse in the chat. Do we sidestep the zombie, or do we have to convince the entire network of big banks, big oil, big defense, big tech, big chemical, big meat and dairy, big pharma, and the political structure? That do they all need to be convinced, or do we just walk right by them and take control of the world?
Well, here's Here's how I see it, and then Patricia, love
that's
for you to comment. But the way I see it is, as part of this new operating system, the new operating system gets rolled out and implemented in stages. First, it's that whole bell curve that you showed, last time, Ray. We're the innovators, and then there'll be early adopters, and then early majority, and then late majority, and all that. And there will be holdouts, and it'll be hard to predict exactly who those holdouts will be. I don't think the energy companies are going to be holdouts for very long, because they need customers loving their brands, right? Whatever their brands are. So they're going to reinvent themselves. I think they'll do that pretty efficiently. So it's impossible to predict who the holdouts will be, but it will go in stages. And again, it could go super quickly. It's kind of hard to imagine it not going super quickly, because this is, number one, it's so fun. It's so enriching. It's so inspiring. It's so empowering. And it helps the best solutions, the best ideas bubble to the top and get disseminated. So we're unleashing what is going to be the most powerful human-driven force on Earth. That is collective intelligence. Nothing is going to be more powerful than this that is human-driven, right? No corporation, no government, no academia, no nothing. If it ain't part of radical collective intelligence, it's going to get left in the dust intellectually, in terms of our ability to reason, to analyze, to model, to invent, to perfect, to implement, to spread, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So step aside zombie apocalypse. We are the new sci-fi green slime that's just covering the earth.
Survival of the fittest.
Exactly.
No, to piggyback on you, Jamin. I mean, if you look at BlackRock Financial, who just they took about 500 billion of their portfolio and divested from oil and from coal and from all those technologies, because they're forward thinking. They know that they're investors. It's still a capitalist world. They have to make money somehow, and they see the future, and the future is green. And if we don't live green, like you said, we're going to fade out. So it's large industry. We see it in our offices too. They're all trying to do recycling programs. They're all trying to do other campaigns to live a healthier life. And to mention what Ray was talking about in the farm industry, in the farm bills, there's a huge amount of information and just personal knowledge of it myself. I see how dirty the industry is, the farming industry, and how much we pollute with phosphates and trying to infest the ground with nitrogen and things like that. And all that runoff creates all these dead zones. And all those examples are there to be seen. And farmers, they have to live with what they're doing too. So they can keep growing crops with Monsanto and creating corn that, gives people cancer. But once the evidence is there and once the facts are there, and you teach farmers how to do things, maybe it might be more physically laborious, but at the end of the day, it's going to create a better system, not only for them, for their bottom line, but for humanity. Then I think it's like a tide you can't evade. It's like a wave that comes and you can't get out of its way. So either you become part of the solution, part of the progress, or you wither away and become a zombie, I guess. But it's inevitable.
I was going to mention BlackRock earlier when Jamin was mentioning 3M. If you have trouble convincing them, those big investment companies are a way to go above their head in a sense and try to convince them that they've got a higher purpose to serve other than their shareholders. At least that's the narrative that's being pushed by BlackRock. And I actually have to write a letter to Larry Fink to try to challenge him to understand the contents of Sailesh Rao's white paper and how this should affect the growth of the stock market. Are those big investment companies above the corporatocracy? Do they really have that ability? Because I know Larry Fink writes a letter every year to CEOs of all the corporations in his portfolio, which is everybody in the United States and in Europe. And Is this another form of greenwashing, or is this legitimate? Is this how change comes about?
I think at a certain point, we have to think of it as legitimate. You know, if we have hope for the future, because I think if they can't get out of their own way, then it's going to be bad, not for just them, but for everybody. We're all breathing the same air. You know, if we keep contaminating, if we keep using these chemical processes that are not in tune with how Mother Nature designed things, we're just shooting ourselves in the foot. So I think eventually we're going to get—
the gun that's shooting ourselves in the foot is the belief that our economy can grow infinitely. And Larry Fink talks about, yeah, our economy is growing great.
Right. But in a finite world, we have a
both
finite amount
ways.
of resources. You know, we have a finite amount of fresh water. We have a finite amount of, you know, soil
Yeah.
and all these things that help the planet grow. We have to realize that it's not infinite growth that's going to get us everywhere. We have to do a sustainable, a very smart, sustainable growth that includes technologies, because obviously technologies help, are catalyst for more efficiency and to get more out of those finite amount of resources. But until we discover another planet that's exactly like ours, and it's maybe a few light years away, that we can all cryogenically freeze and get off this planet, then we have to make do with what we have here. But like you said, the BlackRock example is a good one. When I heard their chief financial officer make that whole argument that they're divesting from all these dirty industries, and it's a huge amount, you know, 500 billion or whatever the amount was, that raised some.
Are they divesting, or are they creating an index that excludes dirty industries?
I believe that they are, instead of investing in those dirty industries, they're going to invest in greener industries. They're going to find.
Because Larry Fink says we don't invest our money. It's not our money. We're
Right. It's
holding money for our clients.
Clients, yeah.
So I was investigating that, researching the after the shooting in Florida, there was a huge amount of backlash against the gun industry, and the gun lobbyists wanted to negotiate, and the NRA and the gun manufacturers weren't coming to the table. And the way that I interpret the story is that Larry Fink said, okay, guys, I'm going to create a new index and you guys won't be on it. I need you to come to the table, or else I'm going to create this new index. And I'm going to ask my shareholders if they want this index. So it managed to create that conversation and break the stalemate. But ultimately, in the end, it was to, you know, find out the bad apples, the few gun shops that were selling guns without the proper methodology of making sure that there's, you know, they just sell guns to anybody. So they sold this idea that there's a few bad apples in the industry, so everybody still continues to make money. So is a solution that continues to make money, that there wasn't any gun laws passed so that the gun manufacturers and gun shops would stop to loot their profits.
Mm-hmm.
But there was conversation. So there's this hint that there's something good happening here.
Well,
This leverage
they're becoming a little bit more conscious, as in forward thinking, because obviously if something isn't sustainable, then they can't keep making those profits 20, 30, 40, 50 years down the line. And when BlackRock took money out of those dirty industries, it's because they agreed with the science, agreed with the facts that if we keep doing this, there's going to be a lot of economic damage and danger done, not only because of flooding, because we can't predict the price of these staple foods in the future, because it's going to be an up and down market that we can't even predict due to all these social factors from climate change. So when they agreed with that, the notion of the scientists, and then they started making it responsible to invest in a future that's it's actually a more stable future for humanity. That's how I understood it. They are they're becoming more conscious of the type of capitalism we need. You know, capitalism is going to be around, and it's still the way people do business and the way they think. But they're starting to realize they have to be more forward thinking.
This is something just happened recently?
Yeah, this happened in the last 2 months, I believe. I remember seeing
divested from
from a lot of dirty industries. I remember seeing an episode on CNBC, and there was a financial representative from BlackRock talking about it, and they were just giving him a lot of questions. I'll have to look up this information. I can't give it to you right here on
Just a Google search. I got a few links here. So it's interesting to know because
yeah,
part of the conversation with the gun manufacturers was we can't sell their stocks. They tell everybody, look, we can't just sell their stocks and bully them financially with stocks specifically. We can create indexes and people who make investments can avoid them. And that was the threat that they were offering. The other unspoken threat is that they hold the voting powers for all the shareholders, and they have almost consistently, like 96% of the time, they vote with the CEO of the company. If the stockholders happen to vote somewhere different, they always vote with the CEOs until they don't. So there's that unspoken, I'm on your side until I'm not. So that's that, got you by the short and curlies. I got your attention now. That attention is real power, even though they don't have it's not their money, it's their voting power. So I'm trying to understand the mechanics of that. And yet at the same time, there's all the airlines are all owned by these few investment companies. And there's this kind of unspoken thing that we're not going to compete with each other and drive our prices down. We want to do whatever creates the most amount of money create the most value for our stockholders.
that's still the case. They're going to start to create the most value for their shareholders, but they're understanding that they need something that's highly sustainable and it avoids risk. And right now, any companies that have to do with dirty industries, whether it be coal or oil and those things, are just creating more risk and a more uncertain future. So I think they're realizing that. There's been a lot of protests as well, a lot of action from just general citizens that they're not doing enough to combat climate change. So I think they started the new year, 2020 here, by making that promise to exit investments in coal production and introduce funds that ban fossil fuel stocks. And that's what they're doing. So I think it's going to have a huge effect on how business is done.
It could. One of the things that they did for the gun thing is they said, we asked around whether people would invest in stocks, that they were interested in these stocks. And the answer was no. Most people didn't care. So I was saying the CEOs may be of the corporations aren't necessarily more or less diabolical than the shareholders. The shareholders, want a return on their investment, and do they want to make ethical investments? He investigated and they didn't say anything. But the threat of creating that index, the fear that there were people that would wise up to this kind of an index, had real tangible effect on the gun manufacturers and got them to come to the table.
Yeah, it's a very we're changing. I mean, it's a world that's changing for the better, I think. And there's a lot of hope that those old practices are they're reassessing everything, and they're realizing that they can't be business as usual because it's not sustainable. Yeah,
it's really hard, and it'd be interesting to have conversations with them because I'm trying to pick and choose, and I find spots where Larry Fink is saying that the economy has to grow, and it has to grow. And when it grows by an increasing percentage, so much the better. But that's him talking to the people that want to hear that. Is that really what he believes, that it has to happen forever? It's hard to tell. Hard to tell. You have to kind of tease that out. But are they above the corporatocracy? That's the big question. Or are they the caretakers of the corporatocracy? Are they the shepherds that are going to make sure that the herd is there forever?
Good point. I mean, the corporatocracy is obviously not beneficial to humanity. When corporations have more rights than the individual, we've seen where that's gone. So we'll see. Maybe we'll see what kind of this future holds for us. We can only
drop it back to collective intelligence. That's part of what we need to learn. Individuals need to learn that the shift that's happened since the 70s, like the Powell memo, idea that healthy corporations means a healthy planet and a healthy economy and a healthy individuals. But that hasn't panned out that way. That we've just seen an increase in billionaires without a reduction of people in poverty. Yet a lot of those people in poverty support that system that they believe. They elected a billionaire.
Yeah, it's kind of counterintuitive, but I think it's always darkest right before the light. So we'll see. I think
it always gets worse before it gets better.
Yeah, it does. We always see the worst of humanity, but I think there's a lot of shining beacons and shining light. I know, Patricia, you're a part of some great groups that do some wonderful work, and you've seen a lot of progress in the local sense, and yeah, it's there's a lot of work to be done.
Yeah, I'm gonna get going to get ready for my next meeting, but I'm really glad I found you on Facebook, Christopher. Really glad to meet you.
Great,
Glad
awesome.
to hear Ray.
We'll be in touch.
Yeah, definitely. All right, bye-bye.
Yeah.
Thanks for the song. I love that.
Bye, farewell, I'll readers and good night. Dun, 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 dun. Here I go.
I like the anticipation of it appearing in the chat. I have a song. Prepare yourself. What could it be?
Right on. Yeah, but I totally agree with you, Ray. It's we hear all this information, all this news, but we don't know what they're saying to each other in the back rooms, and what the actual plan is. There's a lot of factors involved, whether it's a population that's surging to 10 billion, and how money has been going straight up. It's just all the way at the top now, and all the power is there as well. Money equates power. So we don't know if they're just doing things for PR, if they're just trying to keep the populace, suppressed and content, the plebeians, as the Romans used to do with the gladiator games and those kinds of things. But it's the more information that's out there, the more transparent things become, the more empowered individuals like us, and I know there's millions of people like us, become, and the more consciousness grows. And that idea that there's a collective consciousness is very, very true. The way that we vibrate, the way that we think affects those around us. And the more and more people realize that this planet needs saving and that we have to take some drastic actions to do that, I think we will be seeing some amazing changes happening. And I think there is a lot of technology still that hasn't been unleashed. There's a lot of things that people keep close to their vests, secret industries, things like that we can talk about in another chat. But there's, I think there's a lot of promise, because I think someone else mentioned this in the last room chat I had. I think her name was Alice, but the Earth has a amazing propensity to heal, just as humans do. When everything is working correctly, the shift will be very fast, and it will be for the better, and we can heal a lot of this damage that we've created, and actually make money off of it, actually make it an economy of healing, an economy of recycling, an economy of creating green, that whole Green New Deal. When you have a representative like AOC, Alexandria Cortez, on the Hill, and she's championing these things, and we have currently a candidate like Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren and those populists who are, championing causes that are that resonate more with everyone. We are one, that idea, instead of a division, of left and right and all this partisanship. I think it creates a lot of promise, and I'm very hopeful for a lot of positive change. So we'll see where it goes. But yeah, the farming is going to be an interesting thing. I agree with Evan that farmers are very, very open to dialogue and very, very open to, working things out and making things work better. I know a lot have gone into bankruptcy, a lot have lost farms, a lot of small farmers. but their livelihood, their lifestyles, it's something that they're willing to learn new things and adapt to the conditions to make a better product and make a better system for themselves. I saw a documentary just recently on Netflix. I forget the name of it. I should have written it down, but it spoke of a local farmer who started having meetings at his house. I think somewhere in Ohio, and he started getting more and more people involved in those meetings. And from there, his ideas of how to locally farm and do all types of different vegetable produce, not just monoculture, but all these different types of practices. It kind of grew from his small farm and him doing little meet and greets, and it just kept growing and growing and growing. And now it's a very successful farm to table business where he like sells to restaurants and individually to those kinds of things. So, I mean, farmers are going to have to maybe adapt as well. But
Is that Food Inc.?
Maybe Food Inc. I'm not sure.
Salatin?
Possibly, yeah. I'd have to check it out on that.
Polyface Farms?
Yeah.
Is that it?
Yeah, that's the one.
It was probably Food Inc. then.
Yeah.
The problem with that is, like, even if they manage to have this like little ecosystem of a farm that works really well, is it scalable to the appetite of meat for the United States? And that would require like several planets in order to feed everybody that way.
Right.
Only like 700 people get fed by Joel Salatin's farm. Is that?
And that's where as humans we're going to have to change maybe our habits, and realize that if we can't all be eating steaks every day, 6 days a week, and to have a healthy planet. But it's going to be hard to change people's notion on that. But we have a lot of vegan friends and a lot of people who have those ability to get just as much joy out of a zucchini as they do out of a 16-ounce steak.
And have the humility to learn from some other system. Like indigenous systems have a lot to teach. Obviously the one that everybody brings up in environmentalism is make decisions that will affect the next 7 generations. I'm fascinated by the Eat Lancet diet because when they published it, it's obviously a diet to reduce the consumption of Western culture. But some people responded and said, well, we did some research and 1 billion people can't afford this diet. It's got too much meat in it. So the diet is stupid, or your interpretation of the diet is a bit skewed. But the researchers said that, okay, so there's 800 million people that go to bed hungry. They don't get enough nutrition. So put them aside for a second. The next 1 billion people have what's called a sufficiently nutritious diet. I can't remember exactly what they called it. And it is several times smaller than the Eat Lancet diet. So they're receiving enough sufficient nutrition, but it's still 6 times larger than the diet that's designed to get people to cut their diet by at least half or whatever the Eat Lancet diet is. So if and I've heard that we're consuming not just food, we're consuming 6 times too much.
That's probably true.
So the narrative that we should do, eat a few less steaks is not the right one to be having. If we're supposed to reduce our impact by 6 times, start with our food because that's easy, and then start thinking about the other stuff because I don't know how.
We waste a lot of food. Supermarkets throw tons of food out, so it's not used collectively. And instead of throwing it out, maybe they should give it to local organizations who feed the homeless, who feed certain people that don't have the means to get organic food. I was looking up that documentary I was mentioning on Netflix. It's actually called Sustainable. It's not Food Inc. It's a documentary called Sustainable. It's a good one. It follows a farmer by the name of Marty Travis in Illinois. And it's a great talk on how to create a sustainable farm and create your local ecosystem to sell your vegetables and those kinds of things. Actually, very eye-opening, but I think it proves a point that farmers are very open to change and creating their lifestyle that also benefits, the consumer, but with a healthier product. Because there's this green industry that we have right now, or the farming industry we have right now with just large tracts of land, all monocultured with Monsanto being sprayed everywhere, is not getting it done. And that's very easy to see.
Mhm.
But yeah, there's some interesting viewpoints that this collective intelligence is just going to kind of condense it all, I think, and bring the best to the forefront.
Well, this next meeting that comes up, oh boy, is that at 6?
Yep, coming up here any minute now. 7 minutes.
Yeah, it's the Vegan Collective Intelligence meeting, weekly meeting.
Mm-hmm. Well, we should probably get on that one.
Are you joining that one as well?
I might, yeah. I have a few more, maybe an hour or so. I can join it just to listen in. And I'm gonna see what it's about.
It's not at 6?
6 Eastern time, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in a little bit.
Well, I'm going to continue my research on BlackRock, so I'll share what I've got with you when
Sure.
they.
Hey, Ray, how can I get in touch with you if outside of this? If I get an email, or maybe I can find you on Facebook as well.
I'm Ray at climatehealers.org, and I'm on
healers.org. Cool. All right, and I'll look for you on Facebook. Your last name Kowalczyk.
means Smith in Ukrainian.
Oh, okay, cool. Right on. Well, pleasure talking with you, Ray. Thanks for thanks for giving me some information.
Yeah, great. Thanks for jumping in.
Yeah.
All right, awesome, beautiful people. This is a good time to wrap this up, and then we got to kick off the next one. So
I got 5 minutes for dinner. All right.
5 minutes for dinner. Okay. All right. We'll see you in 5 minutes. All right. See you guys soon. Thanks, everybody.